You are watching a Fact TV presentation of the town of Swanzey.
It's officially called to order. Welcome everyone. Good evening. All right, we're officially calling the meeting the Zoning Board of Adjustment meeting for February 24th, 2025. And let's go ahead and start here. And the roll call. Under that, everyone that is on.
Brian, here. Adam,
Here.
Ian,
Here.
Lisa,
Here.
James, not here. Wayne, not here. Pete,
Here.
Joe, here. Right. And we're gonna go into the agenda now. And I'll take care of the agenda too. So we have 6 items under public hearings this evening. The first item is going to be ZBA 24-013 for variance. Both A and B are going to be a variance for Checani. Those are the first 2 items. After those 2 variances, we're going to have a variance from Belt LLC. After that, we're going to have a special exception also from Belt LLC. After that, we're going to have a variance from Fieldstone Land Consultants, and then we're going to have another variance from Fieldstone Land Consultants after that. And any other business which may be required.
Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, everyone had a chance to look at the minutes? Okay, does anyone entertain a motion on those minutes? So moved.
Second.
All right, excellent. Any questions? Thoughts? All right, all those in favor of the minutes being moved forward, please say aye.
Aye.
As well, that's unanimous. Excellent. This. All right, it comes to the attention of the board that we're going to potentially have a new alternate member being interested in the joining the team. Will you be Jessica?
Yes.
Before that,
Sure, makes sense. All right, to fill out our board, we're going to be there's 2 board members, both James Ward and Brian Rogers, that are absent tonight. And what we do is we'll be seating for Brian, we'll be seating Pete Delaney, and for James Ward, we will be seating Joe Parisi. Joe Parisi. Make sure. All right, we have a full board tonight. All right, all 5 here sitting, and so Jessica. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you might be interested in joining the board as an alternate.
Okay. I've lived in Swansea since 2003. Raised my family here. We have 3 sons. I'm a landowner, so I understand the interests of a landowner. But at the same time, I have a passion for truth and for the law. So I'm detail oriented. I believe I can make unbiased decisions based on facts. And I'm just looking for a way that I could maybe serve the town. And it seemed like the best fit for me.
Excellent, excellent. Have you sat on any other boards?
No.
First? Okay.
No, this would be my first.
Fantastic. Well, it's an excellent board to be sitting on. A lot gets accomplished here, and you see quite a few things. Anybody have any questions for Jessica or thoughts they'd like to, or knowledge that you'd like to impart, wisdom? Excellent, excellent. So how many members do we have? That was my question.
we can have 5 alternates.
We have 5 alternates.
We can have.
So currently we have 1, 2, we have 3. Okay, so there's room on the board for another alternate. I will say this, I know that other zoning boards act differently in other towns and cities and so forth. With Swansea, the alternates do spend a lot of time, even if you're not seated on a particular case or anything that comes to the board, we do ask you to participate, you know, and speak and talk and so forth, ask questions. Unless you're sat on the board, you know, in this case, there's 2 members who are sitting here as alternates. You need to be voting on those meetings. But participation is encouraged, you know, and that's something I think that's important, you know, differentiation between Swansea and other places. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Sure. Is there anything we have to do specifically for Jessica?
Just vote yay or nay, and then she goes to the clerk to do her oath of office.
Okay. Excellent. Does anyone have any other thoughts or questions? We'd like to entertain a motion to,
There is an opportunity for you to, obviously, these two gentlemen are called into service, so you'll be called into service, so it's come to the meetings, you get to do all the reading, and there'll be opportunities where if somebody was your neighbor and they needed some assistance, you might decide to recuse yourself from that. You know, so there's, you know, it's been interesting and eye-opening, so
I would agree.
I would welcome her, and I think I would put forth a motion that we accept her. as an
Okay.
alternate.
Excellent. Anyone have thoughts on that? There's been no motion for accepting Jessica's invitation as an alternate member. Wait a second.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been seconded. So all those in favor, please say so by, yes,
Who seconded that?
that would be Pete.
I did.
Also, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And I will also echo Ann's, statements and so forth. My first time as an alternate, I was called on my first day to become part of the board. So I had to read a stack of ordinance about yay high in about 4.5 minutes before I started the meeting. So anyhow, well, welcome, and we're excited to see this. So I think what you're going to be doing is going to be visiting the town hall, and just meeting with the clerk, and there's a swearing in process. Pretty simple. And I guess we'll see you at the next scheduled board meeting. Welcome. Yes,
Clarification, is there any limit to the number of alternates you can? That there can be 5, but how many in a particular meeting? Can we have, is it possible it could be all alternates? Just ask.
Yes. I think so, yes. I'm pretty sure.
That's what I thought,
Yeah,
so,
pretty
okay.
sure.
So I mean, as an alternate being asked to be called in a meeting, you have all the privileges that a full member would have for that particular meeting and for the decision made at that particular meeting. So, excellent. You will be called upon, I promise. All right, excellent. So you're more than welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, kind of feel, but you're also free to go if you like.
Certainly.
Okay, beautiful, beautiful. Okay, moving forward, there's a lot of stuff on the agenda. Regional impact. Has everyone kind of looked over and decided or deciphered that maybe something rose to the level of regional impact or not?
I looked at the items on the agenda, and I didn't feel that any rose to the level of regional impact.
Okay. Excellent. We have to second that as well, right? Do I have a second for that? Please. So all those in favor of,
Before we vote, just because we decided there, or someone proposed there was regional impact. What's the implications of that?
so implications, and Adam can fill in some of the blanks here. From my understanding of this is the regional impact really would be inviting the towns or townships or cities that would be directly affected by that impact to be, somewhat participating or asked to join the meeting, discuss and so forth.
So by saying it doesn't have regional impact, we're saying it doesn't have an effect beyond the town of Swanzey.
Beyond the borders of Swanzey specifically. Now, I mean, there's, situations where there might be small impact and so forth, but really it's something that's significant. It's going to change the course of traffic patterns, things of that nature.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We will confer with our local regional planning.
What's that?
We would confer with our local regional planning commission.
So Southwest
Southwest
Regional
Regional
Planning
Commission
Commission.
would have that effect.
Excellent. So I don't believe you voted, but all those in favor that the items on the agenda today have not risen to the point of regional impact. It's been voted on and seconded. All those in favor of moving forward with that motion, please say aye. Aye as well. All right, you're cruising through the first part here. All right, now we'll get into the actual agenda itself. Adam, you want to kick us off with the first point of business.
Absolutely. So the first item on the agenda, ZBA 24-013, variance. Jake Checani has requested this application for a variance to Section 5, Article B1, to construct a duplex in the business district. Subject property is at tax map 102, lot 81. Lot is on the corner of Underwood Road and Lake Street.
All right. Well, why don't you, Jake, just wait to this in there.
Jake is right here.
So, would you, care to kind of just kick it off and tell us, you know, what you'd like to do and what you'd like to accomplish? And we'd like to listen,
Sure. Am I good here? You want me to-
whatever you feel comfortable, as long as everyone can, you
All
know,
right.
Jake, when you
All right, so. Yeah, so I'm looking for two variances. This has been sort of an ongoing thing. I think everybody's pretty familiar with what I would at least propose to do. So I own a lot of land. It's 0.27 acres. It's a very odd shape. It's about but it has a lot of road frontage on Underwood Road, about 170 feet. However, the Lake Street side is 50 feet. And then tax map 79, 14 Underwood Road is a property that I own. And at that end, it tapers at about 65 feet. So I'm sort of stuck with a bit of an albatross of a piece of land because the nature of the building, requirements, are sort of designed at this point for new lots. And at some point, this lot was created when they put in the Lake Street extension and they cut an existing lot into two pieces. And I want to build a duplex on it because I own the lot straight out. And so I've put, a fair amount of time into thinking about it. And, if you look at the, my map's a little bit crude, but, I'd like to put the building as far, as close to Lake Street as possible, which kind of puts it in the, the crosshairs of having a 50-foot area. And when you have a 30-foot front setback and a 20-foot rear setback, that's essentially 0 feet for me to build on. And if you go to the other end, you have 65 feet, and that doesn't exactly leave very much meat either. And the orientation of the lot is such that I'm kind of stuck with. The idea was to put the building as far away from the house that I currently own and my neighbor's house is, it's very cramped in there. And yeah, that's kind of the size of it. And I guess maybe the most salient point here is whether or not the board agrees that a duplex is a reasonable or fair, building to put on the lot. Regardless, if I'm putting something on the lot, I'm probably going to need a variance for the setbacks because it's just really not feasible or reasonable to ask me to put a building in, the exact one spot that it could go. Or to augment the building to be 10 feet, deep by 30 feet or something abnormal. So that's kind of, that's pretty much what I got to say about it. I'm curious what the board thinks. If, so.
Does anyone, on the board, I mean, we had a site visit, I think most were present at that site visit. Joe, I don't know, you have to be, I don't think.
But I've driven by a lot, so I understand the issue in there.
Okay, excellent.
And one thing I did forget to mention was that, there's already town sewer and town water very close to where the building site would be. And in fact, there's a stub for the sewer that was put in previously when, a previous owner obtained a variance to build a model home. So the proposed building lot is right by where that stub is, so that seemed like a reasonable spot, and I think there's other, things that spot has going for it.
I'm gonna open up the board here in just a second to kind of ask some questions, and anyone in the public as well to have some questions here if they'd like to address them to you. One thing I will suggest there on this is that this board really has two provinces that we deal with. One is, the variance that you're looking for, so variances in general and special exceptions. And, knowing that, the rationale for anybody coming here, they're looking for relief from what the ordinance is stating, right? The ordinance is pretty clear that specific uses are allowed and specific uses are not. But that's really the job of the CPA is to relieve, basically a pressure relief valve for, people in the town and so forth, to be able to see if what they have and what they want to do, fits within the spirit of what that ordinance is. But I would suggest that, the burden for a variance is quite high, quite substantial. And I've just seen that from the board over the years, that to grant a variance requires us to address very specific questions as you went through this application. And I would just suggest that what we're going to be tasked with is going through each of these questions individually, and as a board answering them to the best we can within the spirit of the ordinance and what we're tasked to do here. So I guess I would just suggest, maybe going through a little bit on some of these specific questions and just giving us, I know you've written stuff. And
Okay.
That's fine enough.
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's a good, rather than you, I guess you've already asked me the question. I just have to read. All right, so what do we got? So, you want me to go through each one and just give?
It's completely up to you.
Okay.
I've written here, but
Yeah.
I'm just giving
You
you
know,
an
some of them-
overview of what we're going to
Sure.
be tasked with.
Yeah, okay, so. Granting the variance would not be contrary to the public interest. Yeah, I mean, I don't see, that's a pretty simple one. Other than potentially, other than the encroachment on my neighbor, that would, I don't see who else that this question really involved, other than, the person who could have the encroachment. And, it seems like the public interest would be served by, housing, as there's sort of a housing shortage, as everybody knows. That location of town, there's townhouses, there's a motel right across from the roundabout, so, it seems like it would fit in fine. My impression is that it would fit the neighborhood. Granting the variance would observe the spirit of the ordinance.
To be fair to you, Jay.
There's a million questions.
No, to be fair to you, Jay, you did answer these questions when you did
Right.
the application.
It seems a little, yeah, I guess my question would be is if there's a question, if I didn't answer, if one of my answers isn't good, or is there specific questions on here that I didn't answer properly, or further questions from the board that
And I think that's what the discussion.
things I could clear up.
Around.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I spent a lot of time on these answers.
You did,
Right.
no, you did, yes.
Compared to what I've seen from other people, 1 and 2 sentence answers.
Sure. Are there any questions that the board has of the applicant?
I've got a question.
Joe, please.
In your write-up, in your
Yeah.
application, you talked about, your words, I was done an injustice as the current property owner. Vis-a-vis the current setback requirements.
Yeah,
When did you purchase the property?
2023.
And what were the setback requirements when you purchased the property?
I would assume they're the same as they are now.
Okay, so in effect, you knew you were buying a piece of property that potentially was unbuildable.
Potentially, I was advised by maybe the building code administrator that like, hey, this is what you do. You go, you create a variance and, it wasn't doom and gloom. He didn't say it was gonna be impossible to do. It seems that those setbacks are for residential areas, and this is a very weird part of town. And I think the board would agree with that.
Yeah, I was just reacting to
Yeah.
your words that you were done in injustice.
Yeah. Yes,
You, in
I certainly,
in a way, you created the injustice.
Sure.
Okay, it was already there.
Hmm?
It was already there.
Yeah. And sort of the words you used a little while ago, calling it an albatross piece of land, again, you had the option of not buying the albatross.
Well, but the sure. But, we only have so many resources in this world, and if I have a chance to do something on a lot of land that sits next to mine that I can obtain, why wouldn't I buy it? And try to see what would happen.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
Any other board members have a question they'd like to draw?
Jake,
Yes.
you're proposing a 1,600 square foot building
Mm-hmm.
and you've got if you put that full building where you've got it sited here, you're 15 feet from both the front and the back property line. Is that correct?
I think 20 from.
Well, it says 15 here.
Yeah, 15.
And
15.
yeah. Yeah. So I know I read this, so I'm just,
Right, there's a 30-foot front setback. Yes, you're correct.
okay. Neither of those fit the current ordinance.
Right.
Okay. So I guess I'm just wondering, and I'm just throwing this out for discussion. I mean, you sort of centered it on your property. If you moved it back a bit,
Mm-hmm.
so you could achieve the front setback, would that be an easier variance for us to grant?
Well, there would be still a variance that would be
Yeah,
required.
but in this case, we have to have the front end.
You're reducing, yeah, you're
I'm
correct.
just asking, is it, okay, just for information, so that's a potential.
And I'm sorry, when we're asked, there's two questions that were. There's two variances. One has to do with setbacks.
That's what I'm talking
One
about.
has to do with,
The use of the
are we
property.
getting ahead of ourselves if we're, so one is the use of the property, whether a duplex would be permitted in a business district. That's the first question.
So that's what we're being addressed right now.
Okay, so
No, you're
let me
absolutely
table my
right.
question to the next.
I'm just,
I hear you, okay.
write it down for
Mhm.
sure, but. And I have another question. Were you done asking or?
No, I've got,
I don't know if it's appropriate now or later to ask, because the way I read this overhead that I have says that there's 81 feet.
All right, so that is something that should be addressed
81 feet behind,
because
right here?
the nature, it's 81, but it's cut at an angle across my current yard. So if you square that up, it's 60 feet.
So
I have to put, it just doesn't make,
well, I'm just.
yeah.
Oh, okay, so I was just
There's
thinking,
like a-
because if
I don't understand.
if the house is, and again, this will be for the next question, but if the dwelling was moved to what I would call the side, right?
Yeah.
Closer to the house he already owns,
Mhm.
then he's at risk for the setback to that house. Because that is, I mean, just because he owns both properties means he still needs to meet the setbacks because he may sell that house and,
Mhm.
you know, the burden then is on the next person, so.
As a side note here, I
Yes.
think the way he has it laid out now is, it's respectful to the neighbors. It's nice and center on the lot. If you moved it back, you're gonna run into issues with, butters maybe.
So just so I'm clear on the front and the back, I'm seeing Underwood Road as the front
Yeah,
of the
that's
property.
Mhm.
Just like, just make sure I'm
Oh, yeah.
doing apples to apples.
Yeah.
So it's really okay.
And to be fair to your initial question now, or initial statement, so, but yes, I know we're looking at this from one, as one thing, but we're also looking at two separate
Right,
agenda items. So first being there is exactly correct, is the construction of a duplex a feasible use for the property or not? That's really what we're focusing on first, and then if so, or if not, we move on to the next part of the application.
Yeah, I think if you guys wanted to discuss, parking layout and stuff, that would be
Yeah.
perfect. It's good. Joe did approve, this driveway and parking layout as well. Yeah. Permit hasn't been issued yet, but he approved this site. So.
Based on this, we'd have 4 parking spaces being proposed through this cut on Underwood Avenue or Underwood Road. And I recall this kind of sets down, correct? On the road.
It's in a bit of a,
Kind of a, I don't know, gully's the right.
there's like, that's a, no, it's a fair term, I would say.
Lower.
It's, there's a bit of a berm
Yeah.
and it drops down in there.
Approximately where on this drawing is the driveway?
That's a good question.
If you're looking at Underwood Road, it would be closer to the round.
Where the 8-1 on this is.
Yeah.
Where the, essentially, so where the 8-1 is
Around here.
essentially is where the driveway is being proposed. Maybe that's the front of the driveway.
Yeah. Thank you. And what are the setback requirements for a driveway?
I don't have those on my.
I think it was 10 feet from the rear
Yeah,
property line.
but Joe, our public works director, did approve this orientation, so I'm assuming they met, the regulations that we need to meet.
Okay, but my question still stands. What are the?
I don't have, off the top of my head, I gotta pull up the regs.
I think it's 15 feet from any boundary line.
15 feet.
It's either 30 or 50 feet from any like intersection essentially.
Mm.
Thank you.
100 feet from the intersection road. 100 feet, 10 feet from the rear setback. is What I recall.
And so to the best of our understanding, just so we can move forward with this, part of the thought is that this conforms with our ordinance.
Yes,
Okay.
the town of Swanzey driveway regulations, is pretty free.
All right, I'll ask the board again, any questions surrounding the nature of it being a duplex versus some other structure, with the use? You want to talk around, if there are any questions anyone has specific to that?
So am I correct in assuming that a single family, provided it met the setbacks, would be allowed, but a duplex is considered a multifamily or is it a duplex?
In the business district, a single family would not be permitted,
But when they're,
It would require a
which is
special
why,
exception.
yeah, which is why a variance was issued, on the previous landowner, for a single family.
so there's.
It isn't allowed use
It
with
does
special
say that,
exception.
it does say a multifamily is a special exemption, however, a duplex is not.
Yeah, well, yeah, multifamily in this sense requires 5 or more units.
Yeah.
Right. Now, a question came up here, and I recall it being addressed before, but I just wanted to clarify for the board. As it relates to the property before, was there a variance on this property that was granted by this board prior.
I don't know what year that was granted.
It's like the 1987.
There was an old variance and it's expired by this point, so.
My understanding is it was not constructed and it was gonna be a model home.
Yeah.
I didn't from what I gathered, it wasn't to be lived in, it was to be used as a model
Mhm.
to encourage others to build based
Well,
on
yeah.
the model.
It wasn't acted on and it expired, so,
Okay.
but one was approved in the 80s.
Any other questions from the board? Can I open up to the public here? Anyone in the audience or the public have any thoughts, questions? Sir,
Bob Goodrich. The square footage, 1,600, is that for a single unit? Or? is
That's two,
two,
so
so
it's
each one?
two 800.
800.
Yeah,
That would be a single bedroom.
most likely.
okay, thank you.
Is it
Sir.
two
Oh,
Go ahead. It is two
That was my intention.
Chuck Parson, I just wondered, as far as your driveway goes, you want to do a duplex, do you have enough parking for that? In the driveway?
Yes, well, as far as the requirements are, 2 spaces per unit. And as it's drawn, there's 4.
Right.
Yep. He's meeting the regs on parking.
just to clarify on this, sir, the applicant has provided us with a drawing, so to speak, that identifies 4 parking spaces for that particular unit. Thank you. Okay. Are there any further questions the board would have on this? Do we feel that we are comfortable enough with what we have here to entertain the questions?
I've got a question more of project rather than of the applicant. The applicant just said, as drawn, there are 4 spaces. If we were to approve this variance, does that constrain the applicant to this layout? I.e. where the house is, where the living quarters are, and the shape and size of the driveway?
More or less, yeah.
That's my understanding as well. Now, would the planning board get involved in terms of
Okay.
anything at this point? It would be strictly code enforcement, making
Yep.
sure that everything else would fall into suit.
Yep, code enforcement would be the next,
So it's the living quarters is sort of drawn, the way it's drawn, it's not dimensioned, sort of equal size. So if the applicant wanted to do something other than that, would then they have to come back to us for another variance, or?
I think code enforcement would accept very minor adjustments depending on terrain and.
I think the footprint has to be where it's.
Well, that's why I'm asking, are they
Yeah.
constrained by what's on this piece of paper?
Yes,
And that would be mine
to a large extent.
Thank you.
And it's a fair question. We've seen applications that are, much further down the road in terms of their, their footprint, their construction specificity to the inside of the building and so forth. And then we've seen applications with less. Okay. And Lisa? Ready to move forward?
Ready?
Okay. Any other questions? Hearing none, we are going to close the public portion of this particular application. The board can talk amongst themselves. We can no longer discuss with the applicant or anyone else in the audience what we're doing. That sounds. Okay.
And again, that's specific to the first variant application, not the 2 together.
Correct.
We'll open up the public.
We're going to open up the public hearing. We'll have a whole separate, basically starting from scratch for
Okay.
the next aspect of this.
Thank you.
So
Somebody at 7:34 asked to ask something from the Zoom chat. I think it was before it just got closed. Just saw it.
Okay,
don't know.
I think
Okay.
that's fair. So I'm
That's
gonna
fair.
reopen. I will reopen the public hearing, barring that we did not know we had a question on Zoom. And do we have a question?
Not yet. If the full committee received the comments I'd sent in via Adam earlier.
Yeah, I'm gonna be reading those. Seem like those are more dimension, actually. I have to read those. But you don't need to public hearing. Let me pull this up.
Is this in our packet?
No, I forgot. They were in like two versions the packet ago. What do we consider the last time? All right. All right. So these comments come from Catherine Snow, resident of 7 Underwood Road. Comments, quotes. One, Jake Checani has owned the house at 14 Underwood for 2 years. Since then, the property has deteriorated. I am concerned with his ability to properly manage and build and future upkeep. Two, in his application, he states his handicapped parents, a non-ADA compliant property. Renovations, modern accommodations are concerns for him, none of which have addressed public interests. Three, and again, these are direct quotes from Catherine Snow, 700 Lee. Three, the area of Swanzey does not read. This area of Swanzey does not read like a city lot with houses packed in. I think she has problems with density. Shape and size of the lot, she's saying it's not the town's obligation to help with this application. And diminishing property values is a concern. And certain conditions. I think that about covers it. Property values, not town's obligation to help. ADA compliance. Concerns about building and future upkeep. From in a butter.
Okay.
So there was the follow-up question, if it's approved, will he be required to provide drawings by a professional? Plat and building.
He'll be required to meet our building permit process, which she can read on our website. And I can send that to her as well. But she'll work with he'll work with code enforcement to get a building permit complete. Along with the driveway permit. But yes, there's an official permitting process that he needs to go through.
Okay.
If the meeting's still open, I do have one question for Jake. Thank you. Hi. The fence that runs parallel to Underwood Road. That fence, we would call it the back of the law.
Yeah,
Okay, that fence.
Mhm.
Whose fence is that?
that's my neighbor's.
That's your neighbor's fence.
Mhm.
And you're satisfied that it's located in the adequate spot?
I mean, there's a granite post that I believe, best I can tell is the property line.
Okay.
Drawn.
Okay,
So yeah, they didn't really understand that their lot went. But I guess I haven't exactly torn apart the deed.
right. I'm just, I mean, there is some discussion in your application about previous wrongs to the
Oh.
property, which could be remedied by an analysis of the two deeds. Not just your deed, but the deed to the new property and the deed to your parent, your residence you have now and their deed. I just, I'm just throwing that out there.
Right.
That. Because you're right, it is dense in that area. And these
I think so.
lines are confusing, so.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. All right, seeing no further questions.
I've got a question of Adam that may turn into public comment, so if I can ask it.
Please, Jeff.
What are our, what's allowable in town for an attached ADU?
What do you mean what's allowable?
Rather than calling this a, a multifamily, what if it was referred to as an ADU?
An ADU is allowed by right in every zone that allows a single family, home. Business does not allow a
So
single family home.
then does the applicant need a variance for a two-family house? What if it's just called an a house with an ADU?
He would still need a variance.
Excuse me?
He would still need a variance
And why would you need a variance for an ADU?
because, a business district does not allow single family homes by right.
Hmm.
An ADU is only allowed by right in zones that allow a single family.
So to
Okay,
your-
so the issue is not only it's two-family, it's a house in a business district.
Yeah, so the first variance that we're discussing is, it's because it's a duplex in the business district. Which
So it's
is
because it's in a business district, not that it's a duplex.
correct. Well, yeah, I mean, they go, yeah. They
So if
go,
it was single family, they would still need a variance.
exactly.
Okay.
So to your point, if the two properties were one, it would be a detached, adapted,
And it would still require a
and it
variance.
would still need a variance.
Yep.
But it would be still under all these things.
So the issue isn't the fact that it's two-family, the issue that it's a home in a business district.
Correct.
Okay.
And additionally, a duplex,
Yeah, but again, you get around the duplex by calling it an ADU.
a residential unit with an ADU.
Right.
Yeah, or yeah, you're correct, yeah. And I think to Ann's point, just to clarify, were you referring to if the properties were combined with each other and it was?
Right, well, right now,
Just wanted to make
right
sure
now,
I
it's
understood
two
your point.
distinct properties.
Correct,
And we're not even considering the fact that he owns the one next to it, other than the setbacks.
yeah.
So the setbacks are important in that respect.
They-
So I was just, in the first meeting we had back in November, one of the members of the audience had mentioned that, why not combine the two into one property to give him greater flexibility. But again, it's not germane, it was just an observation.
And it's not being what we're being presented
No,
with as at the.
In which lot what's the other lot you own?
That's 79.
79?
Yeah.
Okay.
no, well, wouldn't that be 80? And I'm sorry, so I'm looking at this, so 79 is large.
That was.
That's you.
Can we refocus on the application I have?
Yeah, well, so the point is just that the setbacks will remain no matter.
Yeah, yeah, I just want to focus on the application that we're on, please.
So are we still open?
We are still open. And we were about to close. Any further questions? Good.
And then I'm seeing on the,
All right, appreciate it. Thank you very much for bringing us to our attention as well.
I'm sorry.
Yep. Okay, so the public hearing aspect of this particular application is a close. We will be speaking only amongst ourselves at the board. And specific to the questions, just for reference, the way we do this typically is to go through each of these questions individually and vote on them individually. And then entertain a motion at the end of that, one way or the other. Sense? Yes, sir.
So just for clarification, something buzzing around, in 1987, ZBA approved a single family home on that particular piece of property, yes or no?
To my understanding, that's what I'm understanding, yes, that it was.
And the fact that nothing was ever built there, the approval expired.
Expired.
Correct.
What is the time frame of that? Is it 5 years?
No, 2 years for.
2 years, 2 years for breaking ground.
Yeah, I need to double
Yeah.
check, but pretty sure it's 2 years.
Some sort of substantial movement of
Yeah,
of the property towards that developed use.
I would entertain that, would be interesting to see how that vote turned out that way with that particular zoning board of adjustment.
Mhm,
If they went through the same discussions, I'm
Same
sure,
discussions.
because they were trying to allow a single.
mhm.
And to Joe's point, what if you built a single family and attached an ADU to it? With that first application, even though it went into abeyance, would it have any weight?
I would say as a town staff employee, no. They got it approved, they let it expire. I'd say it holds no weight over this application.
Okay. We're assuming nothing's been done to the property since then anyhow.
Nothing's been done.
Yeah.
And to be specific, the differentiation between a duplex and a ADU would be very specific to the ownership of the property.
Of course.
You know, so that, you know, an applicant would have to occupy one of the spaces, whereas in this use, that is not being held to the same standard.
Yeah.
Makes sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
It has to be on the market.
Correct. Okay. All right, so number one, just gonna go around the table here, I'll mix it up, appreciate it. I'm gonna take my prerogative as the chair to be the last person that gets to go. I'll get to hear everyone's wonderful comments and gain wisdom through each of them. Okay, so one, could. Yep. Whatever. All right, so could the variance be granted without being contrary to the public interest? So the first I'm gonna ask is, Linda,
Please,
I'm sorry, Lisa, I'm sorry, Lisa. Apologize.
I think, yes, it could be granted without being contrary, because you've got a motel over here, you've got multifamily right here, and this is two more residential units. I don't see that as being contrary to the public interest. I feel that it blends in with what's there.
I apologize.
I don't-
Yeah.
You did have it down.
All right, and
Yes,
yes.
Laurel, so.
Now you're gonna screw with me now, I'm gonna call you Will.
So, yeah, there are examples of similar duplex property nearby within this district, which are already in the business district. And in this instance, I think it could be granted without being contrary to the public interest
Okay,
for this question.
Joe.
Specific to this variance, I don't have a problem. It would not be contrary to public interest.
So yes.
Yes.
Some of the questions are on the negative inverse, but yes. All right,
If you'd asked me first, I would have said yes. And I still say yes.
okay,
You're influenced by other votes.
But not.
well, it's always, you know, to keep open minds, swaying opinions, but I always look at this question in the inverse too. I mean, how does the public damage or hurt as a result of this particular use? I don't particularly see this. The density of the area is such, the property itself is kind of set back and away from a lot of the streets and so forth. Even though the applicant, you know, in this case is the neighbor of this and is in favor of it, one of the neighbors for this, I still think that, you know, the property itself is separate. So I say yes as well. Okay, two, would the spirit of the ordinance be observed if the variance were granted? I'm gonna switch it up. Laura.
Laurel.
So, looking over the ordinance and how it was constructed in the business district and given the historical nature of that, of the community that's nearby, they're all residences. So when I look at I don't think the spirit, I think it is observed. I think that it would be fine. So my answer is yes.
Okay, and yes. Joe.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Yes.
And Lisa.
Yes,
Yes. And I would I would say again, the spirit of the ordinance of this particular variance is to really, understand what's going into the business district. And historically speaking, in this area, we've seen a lot of residential need and so forth. And so the spirit of the ordinance is to, is being observed in this station. So I'd say yes as well. All right, would granted the variance do substantial justice? Joe, I'll give you a shot at this one there.
I'm having trouble with the language of the question, but I would say no.
So it would not do substantial justice.
Correct.
Okay. And it's an interesting question because you could look at it from a couple different
You can look at it both
perspectives.
ways.
Does it do substantial justice for the applicant?
Right,
Is one way to look at it. But I think that's truly the understanding is how it relates to the neighbors and how it relates to the ordinance itself, so. Pete,
Well, I look at it differently, so I'm gonna say, I think there is some justice there. I don't think there's a lot of injustice to the neighbors. So I'm not twisting it, I'm just saying, unless I'm way off base on it, I think there's some justice to it.
okay.
I agree with Pete. I think it would do justice because this is a funky lot. So it would do some justice for this lot. I don't see how it would do injustice to the neighbors. So yes.
Okay, Lisa, yes, and then Ann.
When I think of the neighborhood and it is residential immediately within the confines of Underwood Road, I look at it as justice for both the people who live around it and for the applicants, because if it were a business, if it were still a model home, if it had been made into a model, you would have a lot of traffic on that road, which is not necessarily good for the local people. So I think it does do justice.
Yeah. And I'm gonna say on my side that, does it do substantial justice, does it do injustice to the ordinance is how I view this particular language. And being that the spirit of the variance, or the ordinance is being observed here, it's very difficult for me to look at it one way and not agree with the other. So from that perspective, I'm gonna say yes.
I changed my vote to yes. Again, I keep on co-mingling to do that. But I would change, on this particular one, I changed to yes.
Okay. Think we allowed Joe to comment. Could the variance be granted without diminishing surrounding property values? Please give me a thought.
Well, I think we talked about. We haven't really talked about property value themselves, but it seems to me like this would improve the value of this property, this particular property, and hopefully it would improve the neighborhood also.
Okay. So yes. All right, Lisa.
We didn't hear any testimony about it, the value of the property.
We received one piece from
One
the
piece.
abutter.
Okay,
and,
and that was from.
Miss Liddell.
Yeah.
That was
And
one of
that's
her
number
concerns.
71.
7 Underwood. I'm not sure if that's 7.
Oh, that's what I'm just trying to figure out,
Yeah.
which,
She's on the block. I have to look at her.
She's on the block over
She's
here.
on the block.
Oh, no, over here.
so this one,
It's on this part. You can't see it. Over here.
I don't feel it would devalue the properties, surrounding properties.
Okay,
So, yes.
yes. Ann?
I don't think properly placed. I don't think it would diminish the surrounding properties, but it could. There would have to be some thoughtful, careful placement of the building and the parking. For it not to be approximately for the neighbors. But yes.
Yes, okay. And Joe,
I would say yes, but that's with the assumption that we have to discount the abutters comments about the applicant maintaining their other properties. If that's not, I don't think that's an item for us to really weigh in on one way or another.
yeah,
So I think we're discounting that, I would say yes.
and I would agree, Joe, with your logic specifically to the. We're dealing about a property that doesn't, is undeveloped at this point, not one that's in. Okay. And I would also agree that, I don't think there's been a substantial understanding that there would be evaluation of properties around that we've been given testimony specifically. So from that perspective, I would also say yes. All right, this one is interesting. This is a question that needs to be answered. So, Anne, do special conditions of the property exist that distinguish it from other properties in the area?
Well, and it is one of the very few narrow strips of property that exist in this immediate area. The shape of the property is very high at one end and very low at the other. So in those ways, I think those are conditions which distinguish it from other areas, so yes.
Okay. Okay. Sure.
Again, if we're talking specific to the first variance, I would say yes.
And we are, yep. Yes, we are. And Pete,
I say yes also. It's a irregular shaped lot. It's got two high corners along Lake Street, you know, provided that, I'm just gonna say yes.
and Lisa,
I say yes.
yes as well.
Mhm.
I would say there are definitely some distinguishing factors to the property itself. I mean, going to the site visit, you have a little bit more clarity to that as well. I mentioned earlier, you know, you have kind of this swale that's been kind of cut out of the bottom of the property. You can see how this was, you know, kind of cut through with the extension put through and so forth. So there's, you know, there's some attributing factors to this property that don't exist in others, especially in the neighborhood as well. So I would say yes, in that perspective as well. Okay, if the criteria in subgraph A1 and A2 are not established, an unnecessary hardship will be deemed to exist if and only if. Owing to the special conditions, the property is set forth above the distinguish it from the other properties in the area. The property cannot be reasonably used in strict conformance with the ordinance, and a variance is therefore necessary to enable a reasonable use of the property because. Read the first and then just going further here. Okay,
Everyone answered.
you want to read the rest of this or everyone can, all right.
Yeah,
Owing to the special conditions, of the property distinguish it from the other properties in the area, there is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance and the specific application of the provision to the property. Now it's a fine tongue twister. Yeah,
yes.
so yes. Would you like to elaborate at all?
The other one was yes. Five was yes.
5 was a yes, and this is a yes as well. Good. So owing to the special conditions of the property, and you see the specific ones mentioned and so forth, you're agreeing with this is a yes as well. Okay. Joe,
I'm having trouble with this one, not that I see it as an issue, but I'm in trouble with how it applies to allowing a resident in a business district, because all the things we're talking about to me aren't necessarily germane to that question. I think a lot of what's been brought up to me is more germane to the next variance. And so now, there's granting that this, what are the special conditions associated with allowing a resident in a business district? I don't see it, nor do I think it's applicable.
Mhm.
So I'm having trouble with this one. So at this point on this item, I'd abstain. Because I just don't know how to answer it specific to this variance request and what indeed is part of that variance.
Mhm.
Because I don't understand the special conditions related to a resident in the business district.
Okay. Understood.
And if you put a gun to my head, I'd say no, but I'd rather not say anything at this point.
Okay, Pete, or Peter, would you prefer?
Pete's fine.
Pete.
I'm gonna have Pete.
So yes,
Yes.
and Lisa.
Yes,
I see your point, Joe, 100%. And I think in this, though, the idea is that we need to establish these questions and really kind of answer them all the way through as best we can within the relationship what we have in front of us. And you're right, the use of the residential in the business district is really what the point of this particular application is. So, but from this, the special conditions, I think, really are attributed to the property itself and the use of that property. And I'm going to say yes as well as a result of that.
Another way to think of it is the property unique? Does it have special conditions that make it different than other properties around it? And the
Well,
answer there.
I understand the distinction you're making. The thing I struggle with are those things that make the property unique. Is that germane to putting residents in a business district? And I don't think they are.
So
They may be very germane to the next area.
Mhm.
So, and I think a lot of what members have brought up as we've discussed this variance, I'm not sure necessarily germane to this variance. I think, rewinding those comments to the next variance, I think would be is going to be the reality.
Yeah, more flexible. Okay. That's fair enough. Is the proposed use a reasonable one?
yes, I believe it is.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes,
Joe,
Yes,
okay.
without qualifying.
And I would say, based on everything we discussed, it'd be hard to argue otherwise at this point. So yes, I would say as well, Adam, yes. And seeing that these are met, we don't have to go to B. Is that accurate, Adam? I know we've gone both directions as a board, but we have met criteria subparagraph AI and subparagraph E2. And I don't think it makes sense to go forward to B. Is that accurate? Okay.
correct.
So that being said, everybody has kind of voted individually on the questions. Everyone kind of feel where they are. So I would entertain a motion on this particular application. Anyone like to do so?
I'd like to grant this application.
So he has moved to grant the application. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Lisa has seconded it. So in discussion, I'm sorry, let's vote first, then we have discussion. Yeah, I think you're right there. So any discussions or any thoughts to the motion here? No? No? All right, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. All right, the motion has been carried forward with the affirmative. All right, next on our agenda.
That was specifically for it.
Yes,
I still understand.
all right, Adam, please, to the next item on our agenda.
Yes, so we're moving on to ZBA 24-014 variance. Jake Checani has requested this application for a variance pursuant to Section 5, Article B3, to construct a duplex within front and rear setbacks. and on a lot under 1 acre in size. Subject lot is the same as the previous public hearing, tax map 102 lot 81, lot on the corner of Underwood Road and Lake Street. So just to reiterate, this variance is for the 2 encroachments on the setbacks, and because he is constructing on a lot under 1 acre, which is the same code section, so. No, variance.
Okay,
Just for the record, can we say that the parking as presented has been approved by the town? So we're not get into that this.
Correct.
Okay.
okay, I'll give you the opportunity. Do you have anything further you'd like to add? That you haven't, written already and submitted?
Well, I guess at this point, we're pretty familiar with the dimensions of the property. And I guess again, the most salient thing or at least to me, is that although that tax map shows 81 feet to the rear or to the side of that existing property, I have 14 Underwood Road. If you move over 20 feet and you square it to Underwood Road, it's 60 feet. So, unless I'm putting the duplex unless I'm encroaching on my side setback, kind of completely, kind of cramming it in there in maybe not the most thoughtful way. The reason it is where it is, I thought, was to kind of preserve what privacy there was between my butter's house and my current house. Because that corner of Lake and Underwood is kind of just alone. All the houses are, around Underwood when you make the turn. It just seemed like, why crowd the neighborhood? And that specific spot of the property already is kind of, there's a big dugout part. It's kind of like it's part of a foundation is dug. The town stub is there. And although it's encroaching on my neighbor's property, it's very far from where the actual dwelling is. So though it might seem like, oh, that's a cavalier spot to put it, I don't really believe that is the case, given the conditions and what I've taken into consideration.
A little bit of background on placement. He took into consideration comments from our fire chief, Eric Mattson, myself, and Joe to reconfigure this lot the way he has it. So town staff is happy with the current placement, and we think it's the best option for the strange lot size.
Thank you. Any members of the board have any questions specific to?
I do.
Ann? Please.
This 15 foot from the front, is this
Yeah.
from the road to the building?
Yeah,
So that 15 feet's like
it's like,
really close to the snow when the plows go by.
yeah, it's basically, that's kind of where it dives. So 15 feet, it dives down probably 10 feet. So, it's kind of already done.
So are you actually, well, so here's my question is, are you 15, is the front of the house in this corner 15 feet from the road?
That's drawn,
As well,
right?
as drawn, yes,
Yes.
but in reality, is it? So is the house, so is the whole, so you've got 30 feet setback over here, right?
Yeah, that's not that's
And
just
then-
there as a place marker to say
Oh,
that it's supposed to
okay.
be 30.
So when I'm looking at the proposed location of the house, are you 15 feet from the road,
15 feet from Underwood,
from
the
on
front of the house,
the front of the house, and
oriented.
that's inclusive of the walkway, so pedestrians are gonna be walking about 6 feet from the road? Is that how I'm understanding this? Cause I'm looking at these steps here, right? I assume
Right.
steps leading in
It's
egress.
very difficult to kind of get to understand that without seeing
No, I,
without being there with flags and everything. I mean,
I understand, I'm just trying.
yeah,
to
they very
understand.
well could be. And also that,
One of our questions is whether pedestrians are put at risk.
right,
Of debris or something
gotcha.
when people are driving down the road. Okay.
Sure.
Got somebody on Zoom. I'm concerned with the accuracy of the measurements and back of the envelope design for footprint and parking. I would request the board not approve this without professional drafted plans. And then,
Sorry, go ahead.
in the name on Zoom is Catherine Snow, I don't know.
Professional plans are required, it's for a complete application for a variance. We will need to have properly, scaled plans for the building permit and for the driveway permit. But he's not getting a permit on this approval. Hopefully that answers your question. Yeah, I don't know. Sorry.
You're asking for the variance to setbacks, so you don't know what they are.
No, these are showing 15 feet encroachments on the front and 10-foot encroachment on the rear. No, 5-foot encroachment on the rear, sorry.
Just 5 feet, not 15.
It's a 20-foot requirement.
You know, I'm confused. It's 15 on the rear.
Well, 15 is the setback against the spec of 20, so there's a
Five-foot encroachment.
Oh, I see what you're saying. 5 foot. Yeah.
and there's a 10-foot encroachment. With the driveway, or so there's no encroachment.
According to us, to what the town is stating to us, that the driveway itself has been conformed to the ordinance and is being approved as such. What we're looking at, you're right, is the rear setback
And the front.
and the front
So
setback.
it's 15-foot encroachment on the front and 5 on the rear. And that brings the building side, my question to Jake. Is this, I mean, if it's 1,600 square feet in total, is this gonna be 30 by 55 in your mind? What is the spec of the building?
Well, it's 20 by 40,
Oh, you're gonna.
so 2 stories
Okay, 20 by 40.
and then
Okay.
400 feet of square feet on each.
Okay.
What are the setback requirements for a walkway? Are they different?
I don't think that it wouldn't be a setback, it would be code.
But what, how far does a walkway need to be from the road? Is there any requirement?
Not to my knowledge.
Be like that, like a patio or something like that. It's not attached.
Yeah, just like you can pave up to a property line, you can have a walkway up to the property line.
You have a question on Tim?
Yeah, from the same speaker, it contradicts what you said in the previous hearing, when you said these numbers would be the base of the approval, and how is this driveway approved by whom? Or question mark, by whom? Question mark.
So the driveway wasn't approved, the driveway design was approved by Joe Russo, Director of Public Works. But again, he still needs to have an approved driveway permit prior to construction. What was the first question?
It was more of a statement that it contradicts what you said at the previous hearing, when you said these numbers would be the base of the approval.
I don't think that was the case. I think
Yeah,
the discussion was whether duplex would be allowed
right,
in the business district. We weren't taking the design into account there.
right. I guess I don't follow, I think that's my answer.
No, I think I follow, and I asked the question, are they, if this were approved, and that would have to be both of them, are they constrained by this drawing in terms of where the house is located, the driveway, et cetera? And I heard that they would be constrained by that. I
Yes,
think-
they're mostly constrained, but final permits, they might have slight differences, but.
Right, but you're not gonna take the house and move it 5 feet back or move it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I think that's what the question.
Okay, yeah. So if the code enforcement officer finds a large discrepancy between this And the building permit, they wouldn't approve the building permit. Right. I think that's what Kathy probably.
Yeah, you can slide a little bit either way. So it's just.
Yeah, and given that it's a setback issue, hopefully you're not sliding it very.
It couldn't be
No,
slid
no,
into
no.
an additional setback,
You know,
without coming for another variance.
that's right, but as long as it, this and this line are the same, they can slide this way or that way, as long as that setback is met. That's, I think that's what we're looking at, is determining whether it's to improve. You can go there.
Correct. Okay. So front and rear, based on the
Yeah.
size. And this is more of an observation than anything else. I think it's been discussed, changing the size of the building. And I think the answer really was, there's only so much you can compress this to make any sense. I think that was kind of the answer in terms of why this could not be, reduced in size to meet that setback. Okay. Lisa, Anna, any other questions of the applicant on this? Joe?
Have we heard from the two abutters that are been sort of encroaching on?
And we've only heard from, Miss Kathy.
And which is, I'm talking about lot 82 and 79. So,
Oh, 82 is a cemetery.
well, someone owns it.
Well, actually, it's not a cemetery, it's a grassy area that belongs to Waterview. It's the small square, I think the town owns so 79 is this house here.
No, my question is very simple. Have we heard from the abutter who owns 82 and the abutter who owns 79?
No.
Okay.
No,
Thank you.
But, all the notifications have been sent out
Please.
Twice now.
to do that, or to respond to it. All right, we have an additional question.
Again, it's kind of more of a statement, but, I know Amanda has been at earlier meetings and is concerned about how close this is to her property. She came to the first one at Wickham and came to the site visit.
So I sent out, butters notices again. Our last meeting was canceled, so that triggered the need for me to resend a butters notices. So they received an butters notice, for this specific meeting. At least they should have.
So, my certified letter said it was attempted 3 times, and I happened to pick it up on the day that it was going back. So just because you sent it does not necessarily mean that.
Sorry, I should say that we met our legal requirements for public notice. I know that sometimes they don't get received, but
I was on my envelope, it said that, like, it was attempted 3 times, and I'm
Yeah.
like, that would have been awesome, because they never.
yeah, that can be a frustrating process. But that's why we posted on the website, the Keene Sentinel, 3 public places. So.
Are the past comments from the owner of 79 germane?
I never had any comments from the owner of 79. So I never had any comments from the owner of 79.
Okay, they were contrary to what the Zoom question or comment was.
I never received any comments from 79.
yeah, they might have discussed it amongst themselves, but
Well, that's not what I heard. I
Right.
heard something different.
that's right.
Yes, if it's a statement, I'm gonna maybe refrain, but I'll take a question. I would just read it. I mean, yeah.
I only stated this because the question was asked about how the abutters felt, and someone there said no comments had been received.
I'm sorry, what was the question again?
I
We're
only,
the ones that are, I know, I'm sorry. Yeah, so we need to hear this. Thank you.
I only stated this because the question was asked about how the abutters felt, and someone there said no comments had been received.
I read Kathy's comment. So
From lot 79.
she's not from lot 79.
No, but that's who we received comments. With nothing from 79.
Nothing from 79.
No,
Miss Snow is across the street in 65.
Oh, okay.
From lot 65.
Okay. Any further questions from the audience? Appreciate it. Everyone, thank you so much. We're gonna get through this, I promise.
Sorry, I'm trying to move along a little bit.
Yep. All right, so any other questions? No? All right, so as a result of that, we're going to close. Everyone's comfortable going forward. We're gonna close the public hearing aspect of this and go to the question, same format as was discussed before. And Pete, what do you think? Want to give it a shot here? Could the variance be granted without being contrary to the public interest?
We've heard from one person in the area who I would say would be the public interest. Is that right?
Well,
As far as the butters or neighbors,
as far as the butters and neighbors, there's public interest from there, and then there's the ordinance in the town as a whole.
I'm speaking just to the only one person.
That we're aware of at this point, that's been presented to us, correct?
I have to say that I think I would say yes. Yes.
Lisa?
I also say yes.
All right, just. We have to put a little bit of meat on the bone, just a little bit, just because it's one of the responsibilities for us to.
Okay, I don't think it's contrary to public interest because of the surrounding area and what's in the surrounding area. I think it's reasonable for this lot to allow the variance.
Thank you, Lisa, appreciate that. Yeah,
As drawn and presented, I think the placement of the building ultimately, as long as it didn't, I mean, as I understand it, we're talking about doing a variance for 5 feet from this back property line, right? That's how I understand it. And a whole 15 feet in the front, which could vary. I have concerns about the pedestrian traffic. But overall, I think it could be granted without being contrary. I don't know if we can add stipulations about that, but when they do the building, do the building permit, I wouldn't want it to exceed these numbers that we're granting the variance for.
that's something that you probably note
Okay.
in a motion.
Then yes,
Okay. Joe?
With little or no input from the butters, it's hard for me to say. It would be it wouldn't be again, I'm having trouble with the double negative. This would not be contrary to the public.
Okay. So the answer would be in the affirmative for that, okay?
Yes.
And again, this is one of those that I look in the reverse, how would the public be harmed directly by this? And really, we're talking about encroachments and 2 setbacks. That's specifically what we're talking about. One of those encroachments is on a road that is used, of course, and so forth, but it's not as main as say Lake Street is in terms of that. So the other is the back rear setback, and those directly impact both lots in the rear. And, you know, comment has been minimal there. So as a result of that, so yes, I would say that the variance could be granted without being against the public interest, so yes. Would the spirit of the ordinance be observed with the variance if the variance were granted? Lisa? Thank you.
I think it would be. And again, we haven't heard from the 2 main abutters. Yes, I think it would be.
Okay. Yeah,
yes.
okay. Joe?
No. Cutting the front setback in half to me is not maintaining the spirit of the ordinance of the 30-foot setback.
Okay. Peter?
I'm gonna go with a yes on this. So I think it is observed.
And then I think in terms of this, the spirit of the ordinance is really on these two setbacks specifically, and as it relates to the property itself. And that's really how we're looking at this as a variance. And there really is no other, there's not very limited other ways to make this a buildable lot in any way, shape, or form without the relief that would be positioned as for a variance. So as a result of that, I would say yes. All right, well, granted the variance do substantial justice. We're gonna start with,
Sure it would. It takes a lot which would otherwise not be buildable. I do have concerns regarding the safety. I don't understand those will be addressed by the code enforcement officers.
Mhm.
But yes,
Joe?
Again, taking the negative, not granting the variance caused an injustice. And so I would answer this no. Again, the injustice in my mind, the situation allowing the injustice created by the applicant. They had the option of not purchasing the lot. So I would say no.
Okay. Pete?
Well, I think, contrary to Joe, I think that this specific lot, the only way to put a building there is to go ahead and do some encroachment on the setbacks. So I think it does substantial justice to the property. So I say yes.
Lisa? Thank you.
I agree with Pete. On this particular lot, we need to look at the strange setup of this particular one. And yes, we're gonna have to allow some encroachment for him to be able to put a building on. So, yes.
Okay. I'd say yes as well. Could the variance be granted without diminishing surrounding property values? We'll start with Joe on this one.
There's been no evidence that it would, so I would say yes.
I agree with Joe. I just can't see that it's going to do anything but increase the property owners.
Lisa?
Surrounding property.
I agree, yes.
Okay. And yeah.
I agree as well.
Okay. And I will say yes as well. We just haven't heard the evidence of this diminishing property value or have testimony and so forth to say. So I would say yes as well. Do special conditions of the property exist that distinguish it from other properties in the area? Pete, you want to get a shot at this, please?
I was going to say, you should.
I got all the power.
We've
all
talked
the
about
crown
this in the last, in 3 and 4, this particular piece of property is unique. And therefore, I think the special conditions of the property do exist to allow, we should allow this. So I say yes.
Okay. Lisa?
I also say yes.
Okay. And?
I say yes, and I'm also respecting Joe in this regard because I too have concerns over the setback, particularly in the front. But another special condition of this property that I hadn't considered is that it's basically a dead end road. It ends at a business. There's no development across the street. I do have concerns that the houses, the duplex is so close to the road that it's going to get struck by ice and debris from plows. But hopefully the town plows will take care. But there should be some consideration for that. So,
Thank you. And your answer is yes, though, right?
yes.
Okay. And Joe?
Again, I would say no. My comment is the same as I did on number 3.
Okay. I think we've established that there are some, distinguishing conditions in this particular lot. And I think that changes the, it gives, there's some due consideration for the lot and making it buildable for this purpose. So I think as a result of those special conditions that we've kind of discussed, that yes, I would also agree with Lisa and this. Okay, next. Owing to the special conditions of the property distinguish it from other properties in the area, there is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance and the specific application and provision of the property. Lisa.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah,
Yes. I agree.
can I assume that it was because of your answer
Yes.
previously?
Yeah.
Okay.
If that's how I would, that's how I was trying.
Okay. Joe.
Not because-
Owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, there is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance and the specific application and provision to the property.
Yeah, I'm trying to find that wording in this package, and I'm not finding that word. But I think in the end, it's gonna be, I'd say,
Okay.
I'm gonna agree.
And I'm also going to agree, and my rationale is again, the distinguishing characteristic that we answered in the question first. Okay, and last, is the proposed use a reasonable one? Joe.
is the proposed use of reason? Yeah, it's a reasonable request.
Okay,
It is a reasonable request. Yeah. I agree with Joe.
okay. Lisa,
I agree, it was reasonable.
and
Yes, it is. I agree with John.
yes as well, I would say that the proposed use is a reasonable one for, talking about residential use in a business district. We have clarified that when we're looking at the two special exceptions. I mean, the two setbacks is really what we're focused in on. So I would say yes as well.
Do we need to state anything? Or are we relying on code enforcement to enforce that the setbacks don't change beyond what we've been given?
It is code enforcement's purview
That's
to
their
look
purview.
at.
Do we
to make
need to
sure
say
that that's-
or that just is a thing?
It is
It's a
part,
trusted thing.
it is part of what the responsibility of code enforcement is to do that. So I don't know that it would be necessary to reiterate that
Okay.
further, as it's an understood
All right.
responsibility.
Given what's the current status of the code enforcement position? Bill? Is it Bill?
Yeah.
Yeah, Chris is in the office now.
And does the new person understand that the applicants in general are bound by what's approved?
Yes, yeah, him and I have talked about this
Okay.
specifically.
Excellent question.
Well, there's good building permits, got it.
Well, the same
Got a
person.
bullet permit.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if the person isn't familiar with our way of doing things, they may assume that the applicant can change this.
Mhm.
Again, if you're talking about someone who's been in the town for
Right.
a long period of time, and they're pretty competent, usually they understand it. If it's a brand new person, seems like they would be some risk.
Okay, we've covered all the questions. We don't have to go further into this criteria. I will entertain a motion for this application.
I'll make a motion for ZBA 24-014 variance for Jake Checani that we approve the variance for the setbacks that are described in here.
Is there a second? Lisa, second? All right, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on Dan's motion?
If I was, well, the only thing I want to make a recommendation of, and I'll make this to you specifically, is that I think it would be in your best interest with your neighbors and the other property that you own to really determine where these lines are. Because to do so would save you a lot of grief. I don't know what the expenses involved in that, but your acquisition of this particular piece of property was a smart one. And to do the best with it, I think that would be in your best interest.
Thank you.
Is that okay?
Fair enough. Thank you. Okay, motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye, and all those in, opposed?
Opposed?
Noted. It is a 4-1 decision. It does pass.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. I know that, took a while.
You'll hear from me tomorrow, okay?
I will.
I'll send you an email if you feel.
Thank you.
All right.
Just in discussion. The results of the setback. Should be attached and go. And number two, the top of the negative survey. We're not doing this on. I was gonna bring that up. So I don't think-
Yeah, I don't think we can force that. We are based on the lines and so various. We're basing it
I bet you they could sit here. It's not.
Yeah. Not to worry about that. Okay. Thank you.
Am I good?
Oh, you're, Bill's just like 10 feet tall.
I know.
Yeah. As I've seen everything in Vegas, I understand how you accept this question. Or something this close.
Yeah, for online Zoom calls, just trying to keep us on topic. We're veering way off.
That's
I
understand.
apologize for stepping in, but I'm really trying to keep us on.
Let's go. Yeah, let's go.
I do apologize.
Which is just how it's stop it.
Well, you guys can vote to waive it.
Think about bringing it a little bit earlier to get more. All right. Yes.
Close the public hearing. You and your discretion.
Okay, yeah. I appreciate that. I just think we covered a lot of ground at that stage. But yes, thank you. All right, let's move on to the next item on our agenda. Adam, can you pick us off, please?
Absolutely. So we're on ZBA 25-001 for a variance. Black Belt LLC has requested this application for a variance pursuant to Section 7, Article E1, to construct a leach field within the 25-foot wetland setback. Subject property is at tax map 220 lot 5. Again, this is to construct a leach field within the 125-foot wetland setback.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Adam, Stefan. My name is Mark Beaudry. I'm with Civil Works New England out of Dover, New Hampshire, and professional engineer here in the state. And with me this evening is Stephen Giordano and Lonnie Giordano, who are Black Belt LLC, who are the owners applicants, and who purchased the property from the town of Swanzey a couple of years ago, and are now looking to develop the property, which is within the business district at the intersection of Marcy Hill Road and Route 12. And so regarding the variances that the one single variance that we're looking for, the project otherwise is an allowed use in the business district, a restaurant use. It's consistent with the intent of the business district as far as, use that is, services the town and the traveling public. And what it is proposed to be is a drive-through type restaurant and like a coffee shop or something like that. There are no specific tenants lined up, and the Giordano's are looking for basically an approved site plan to then be able to market to various tenants and potential tenants to occupy the use. And it does have a
drive-through lane proposed, which is obviously the subject of our second special exception that we will talk to in a little bit. The project is, the building itself is 2,380 square feet. And it would have two drive-through windows on the south side. And it's also important to note that we are with the Town of Swanzey Planning Board now, going through the site plan review process. And Giordano's, we've been talking with the Town of Swanzey on an informational basis, and then we started our public hearings a couple weeks ago, but probably since, I would say last summer. And had several information meetings with the town and whatnot, and incorporated comments. And the Giordano's have been, black belt, been looking to, accommodate the town every step of the way, and have this be a win-win for everybody. So the, what we're looking at is I guess you could think of it like the Dunkin' Donuts that's at 47 on Monadnock Highway, that's, up the road a bit closer to Keene. And so we have the restaurant itself with, we have 15 parking spaces proposed, and which exceeds the requirements of the ordinance. And one thing that has changed and evolved a little bit is that it's kind of more related to the second use, so the drive-through, but I'll touch on it very quickly. Is that we'll have two inbound lanes from Marcy Hill Road, and a recent change from possibly the plan that was in your packet, yes, is that we did have an exit lane at this location right here that was the DPW, we got comments back, and they did not like the location of that relative to Marcy Hill Road, thought it was too close. So we then started talking with New Hampshire DOT about a egress lane out onto Monadnock Highway Route 12. And that was conceptually approved by DOT. Obviously, we have to go through that formal process and everything else. But at the same time, we wanted to have an egress lane now out onto Marcy Hill Road. So for several reasons, but we can talk about that more if you would like when we're talking about the drive-through. So this location, just so you know, of the driveway now is supported by the DPW director, and this lane right here is supported by DOT, obviously subject to site plan approval, DOT driveway permitting, etc. So I just wanted to touch on that. And so what we are looking at now is a variance related to the proposed on-site, leaching system or, septic system. What I'd like to show you really quick is and by the way, I don't believe that the driveway change, really affects what we're seeking with the board tonight. So I think it's okay to continue. But so the overall property is 15 acres. And this is the area, the development site that we're looking at. That's, probably, about an acre. And there's upland. You can see some pocket wetlands. But so at this location with the frontage on Route 12 and Marcy Hill Road, there, as we mentioned in our application, there's no location, in this corner that is more than 125 feet away from wetlands that could be used for the leaching system for the septic. So it's important to note that this wetland that was talked about, we had an informational meeting with conservation a few weeks ago. We talked about it with planning board, is that the upland area in the back of the property is separated by this wetland entirely. So to touching on the spirit and intent of the ordinance, the location that we are proposing does not require any wetland alteration whatsoever. But going to some other location on the property, for example, in the back, would require a pipe to go underneath the force main, to go underneath the wetland that would result in a wetland crossing of 110 feet. So we think, because this is in the wetland, protection ordinance, that doing a design that is, involves no wetland disturbance is certainly we feel within the intent of the ordinance than disturbing a wetland to get to the, somewhere else on the property. So I think that's important to point out. Now, we are, again, sir. This is an important plan. It's a little hard to see, but even considering, I know one of the questions came up at a previous meeting about, how it related to the wetland that's on the north side of Marcy Hill Road. So that's shown here. Is wetland along the frontage here. Is that wetland right here that I pointed out earlier in the wetland to the south. So those red lines right there are the 75 feet off of all the wetlands. And then we located the proposed, septic system, leaching system within that window. So we are actually, we're seeking relief from the ordinance, the way it's currently written, requiring 125 feet off of wetland. We're actually proposing it to be, it's actually 79 to 80 feet off the wetland. But we have to go through New Hampshire DES permitting, everything else, so we wanted to give ourselves a little bit of breathing room, so we asked for the 75 foot separation, which in effect would be a 50 feet relief. Now, as we mentioned in our application, this location exceeds, doesn't just meet, but exceeds all requirements of the New Hampshire DES requirements for on-site wastewater septic systems. So, in fact, the poorly drained wetlands over here would only require a 50 foot separation by New Hampshire DES. We have something more than 75. When you talk about the very poorly drained wetlands, which would be here and here, those would be 75 feet under New Hampshire DES. So we actually are meeting or somewhat exceeding those requirements of New Hampshire DES. So this fully complies with New Hampshire DES. And other than the special exception, which is not really a relief or a variance, but it's there are no requirements for any other relief here. It meets all the setbacks for the building, parking, everything else. The stormwater design meets New Hampshire alteration of terrain requirements. It's a pretty elaborate stormwater design. It may come up, the further we go about the, some of the history of this property, some work that occurred back in 1985. I could say their septic system was proposed and permitted right about, there. So this is similar to the design that was permitted back then, which I believe predated the wetlands ordinance. So anyway, so as far as going through some of I think it's also important to point out that back around November or so, when we were, we actually met with a joint meeting of the Planning Board and Conservation Commission that were talking at the same night about the proposed changes to the wetlands ordinance, which obviously you're all familiar with, and I believe there's a couple of variance applications after us related to that. But this was all tabled as it's not going to be on the town meeting, this part of it, but in March, but I believe it's going to be considered for next year. The town is considering reducing the 125 foot setback requirement down to 75 feet. So this proposal, exceeds the requirements of where the bylaw appears to be going. So I know that's may or may not happen, but I think it's just important to get out there on the record, so. So as far as the, whether it's contrary to the public interest or not, I would respectfully say no, that it's not contrary because it exceeds the requirements of New Hampshire DES. As far as the being within the spirit of the ordinance, I touched on that already about, our belief that, going, across these wetlands over here would be less within the spirit of the ordinance than a location that doesn't disturb any wetlands whatsoever and exceeds DES requirements. We believe substantial justice would be served because, again, it's consistent with the, where we believe the wetlands ordinance changes to be going. And it's, allows a system to be built, immediately adjacent to the proposed use with no wetland alteration. We believe it will not diminish surrounding property values because, or as a general, because it again is doesn't the residential zone actually starts a couple hundred feet up the road, and this property is entirely business zone. The use is an allowed use. As far as the restaurant's concerned, and the septic systems are allowed on the property. We just need to get some relief to locate it where we're proposing it, and again, it exceeds New Hampshire DES requirements. So, as far as the hardship goes, one thing I want to just clarify for the record for under maybe 5 and 5A is that it says there are no areas on the property that are, more than 125 feet. No, of this area of the property, okay? Now, obviously, and I think some of the comments that came from conservation were that there are parts of this property up in the back that in theory would be more than 125 feet from the wetland. But again, I think we need to reasonably consider what it's going to take to get to that location. So I think they're, because of that, I believe they're, getting up into the back is a hardship versus, doing the location, the septic, immediately adjacent to the use that is, exceeds, DES requirements. And as far as the distinguishing from other properties, if you look at this corridor along, Route 12 and Monadnock Highway, pretty much all of the uses along this side of the road are, the houses appear to be within 125 feet of the wetlands, that are, this wetland system continues up to the north and continues down to the south. The house that's right here, the towing business, all of these uses already have septics that comply with DES requirements, but they are closer than 125 feet to the wetlands. So this use would actually be very consistent with the other already established uses in the area. So, and whether the use is reasonable or not, I believe we've already, spoken to that. So it's, because it exceeds the requirements of DES, again, I've said that a lot, I know, but I think it's important that the use is reasonable. It's doesn't involve any wetland alteration. The building itself is an allowed use. And obviously, as we'll hear soon, the drive-through actually needs the special exception, but we meet or exceed all the requirements of the ordinance relative to drive-throughs. So we'll touch on that more in the next year. But, so that, I guess, is our presentation. If you had any questions for me or the Giordano's, we're more than happy to answer.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Members of the board, any questions specific to distance from wetland?
Well, wetlands, yes, but I'm just trying to understand the property itself. Is there anything, what is it that distinguishes it from other properties? You said what it has in common, wetlands it has in common. But is there anything about this particular piece, other than from what I saw, that corridor you were showing me, where there was a wetland between drier part of the property, so they own that part also. I'm just trying to understand if there's anything real special about this property, other than the only dry land you have is up in that upper right-hand corner,
Well,
right? That's
I
what's special.
respectfully disagree that this is dry land too, but it's just no dry land within, that's more than 125 feet from wetlands. And so I would say that is the difference with other properties that obviously are, building permits are being issued. So there are properties in town that,
Okay,
can meet the 125-foot setback, but I think it's been maybe enough of an issue that, in town, that that the town has been interested in reducing that, setback down to something more in line with New Hampshire DES standards, but still in excess of DES standards.
Right.
Because they require 75 feet from all wetlands.
Yeah.
Regardless of poorly drained or very poorly drained.
Thank you. Joe?
Just want to clarify, I've heard a lot about what the state, via DDS's requirements are, but what are the town requirements?
125, correct?
For leach field or anything?
Leach field.
From leach field. What about building in general from, wetlands?
In this case, it doesn't.
Excuse me?
It's not. It's not relevant to what he's
No,
proposing.
there are
That's not my
no,
question, I'm just trying to understand what the,
no,
I've
no,
heard a lot about what DES requirements are. I've heard very little of what the town requirements are, and I'll be honest with you, I haven't read up on our zoning ordinances, so I'm asking this, or what are the town requirements regarding wetlands?
You can build up field,
You can build up,
yeah, but for the leach field specifically, 125.
you can actually build in it
You can build on.
with New Hampshire DES, sorry to mention them again, with New Hampshire DES approval of a wetlands permit.
You do need that permit.
Oh, absolutely,
Mhm.
yeah, and we're totally.
thank
We
you.
need wetlands approval, we need DOT approval, we need DES approval.
Mhm.
So, but until we go through planning board, until we go through, the zoning board, it's like it doesn't make a lot of sense, frankly, to go and seek all those other permits before we meet with you folks first.
Mhm. Do we have the notion of a joint planning board, zoning board meeting?
We can set one up.
Things like, rather than doing this series, even the parliament.
We could do it. That's all it is on.
I just have one question / observation now. There's no one's got a crystal ball in terms of what's gonna happen tomorrow, but it's been alluded that there is a potential change to certain ordinances or proposed, but and whether or not it gets voted or not. If it was to be voted in the affirmative by the town, would this applicant be required to be here today for this particular variance?
Yeah. Well,
No.
yes, because I understand.
Special exception, but I'm asking about the variance.
I understand what you were saying, Mark. There was initially an amendment proposed that would not require this variance.
Right.
That amendment was not carried forward to the warrant article. So to your answer, yes, he was still required. He would still be required to be here.
Okay.
You will hear at the next, not our next hearing, but the two at the end.
Yeah.
How the ordinance is currently, being proposed to be changed at town meeting warrant on March 11th this year. But it does not relate to the setback, that was tabled. It's regarding, filling of wetlands in general.
Okay, appreciate that. I just want a clarification on that as it relates to
Can
the,
I pick up on that? Just, even if there was a pending warrant article that was gonna go on the ballot, should we be making decisions based on what might be,
No.
or we gotta live by?
no, I'm just curious. I mean,
No, I'm
it's
just,
interesting to know.
I will actually disagree with that, because we do have our last, we're not gonna get into it right now, but there is a specific RSA that relates to the issuance of building permits. Our code enforcement officer is not allowed to issue a building permit 120 days prior to a town election. If that building permit would interfere with a potential warrant article. So yes, we are allowed to issue decisions like this on stuff that hasn't been adopted in our ordinance yet.
well, I would think we could, because we're the zoning board. And we
Yeah.
have the- I wouldn't think the planning board could make a decision based on what might be.
Right. We'll get more into that in our next 2 weeks.
Yeah. Okay. Anybody else have a question? Any board member? Member of the public? Anybody have a question or,
I do have a question.
I'm sorry, you're right, right.
No, go ahead, it's fine.
Is there any other questions amongst the board? So no, I'm gonna open up the public hearing aspects of this, so yes.
All right, my name is Linda Hunt. I live up on Marcy Hill. Tonight was the first time I heard you refer to a potential restaurant going there. When I went to the last meeting with Conservation Committee, it was more of a coffee drive-through. Nothing was set in stone. I understand that. However, my question is, if there is a restaurant that is going in there, don't they need to have some type of holding tank, grease trap to collect that stuff so it's not going out to the leach field? Because of our wetlands we do have out there.
The question is there an extra requirement?
Correct, if it turns into a restaurant, because now you're talking about excess grease, bunch of cooking fats. Don't really want that going out there.
The question is there an additional? You're wanting to work with her.
The answer is yes. Septic tank, grease trap, yes. And it's all proposed. Pump chamber, it would go grease trap, septic tank into the pump chamber, would lift it up into the disposal field.
Your proposed septic plan addresses the need for this, is that what you're saying?
We have the utility plan. In our plan set. Again, it shows the old driveway, so ignore that, but 1,500 gallon grease trap, 2,500 gallon septic tank, 1,000 gallon pump chamber. In the proposed chamber leach field, so yes, fully compliant.
Okay, thank you. I just
You're welcome.
didn't hear nothing about it.
That was all on the
Yeah.
original plan, it was just
Right,
different wording.
well, the wording really hasn't anything to do. And the plan title that was before the planning board and everything else says, drive-through restaurant. So, I think we just been speculating that it could potentially be a coffee shop, drive-through restaurant. So we're not hiding any of that.
I wasn't trying to imply you were.
Okay,
It's
okay.
just that wasn't mentioned at the last thing,
Okay, fair
last
enough.
one I went to.
Okay.
Thank you. You got a question as well?
Yeah, for statements and concerns. My name is Amanda Gunseth and I am the abutting property owner at 437 Monadnock Highway.
Amanda Gunseth.
I have resided on that stretch of highway my entire life. My parents developed the property at 427 Monadnock Highway, which is currently Emerson's. Back in 1985, when Duties were trying to build their gas station, they brought in an illegal amount of fill into that property which flooded my parents' property right in between us. So when you're gonna start digging, and then when you did the test holes, if I remember correctly, it said down there, they dug a foot down before finding water.
So if you're gonna be developing extra holding tanks, parking, building an establishment, what happens to all that groundwater? It's gonna come down to my property. Let alone pulling out into traffic. Route 12, I live there, I work there down the street. And it is hellacious pulling out onto Route 12 during peak business hours. So the people that live up on Marcy Hill, that is their primary in and out, coming in, out to go to work, school, whatever. You're gonna create a extreme backup for them, which is already atrocious, let alone people coming in off of the highway where they go extremely fast and do not abide by the speed limit. Like, has any of that stuff come into consideration in this project?
Well, I'm just to hold on this real quick. What we're currently looking.
I know I'm a leach field, but I gotta voice it because this is the first thing I saw them digging. I tried to find answers. So if it's said, it's within, somebody's thinking about it. I think the leach field at the wetlands, all of that, I don't think you should be able to build property or a septic system in it. I mean, you go down the street where you have the Swanzey Diner, they don't have a septic system because they're right there. They have 3 holding tanks that have to be pumped out.
3 times a week.
And just to clarify, so just really quick, I'm sorry, the septic system being proposed, correct me if I'm wrong, is 75 to 80 feet from wetlands. So it's not in wetlands, it's 75 to 80 feet from a wetland.
But that whole property right there, I grew up there, I played in there, like, I'm familiar with that lot, like, he's not wrong, the out back, that is absolutely dry, and you are also not wrong that the access point to get out there is the challenge because of the right of way to get there. And obviously, it's not a conducive piece of property because it's not right on the corner of Route 12. But I mean, you drive by, you can see the little creeks running through there. So you're gonna have a disturbance.
Sorry.
No, that's,
So as far as the, yes, there's no denying that the seasonal high water table was fairly close to the surface, but the leach field is set 4 feet above that. So that's why we have to use the pump system to go from the building site up into the leach fields. And we're talking about putting a couple feet of additional fill, over this area. So it's gonna be built up basically to road elevation. And all the drainage system will go into this, the wet pond in the back that again meets all of DES requirements. Is the wetland system to the south is no doubt pretty wet and standing water, everything else. And it's I think at the last meeting, people talked about, culverts and flows and everything coming through the property that goes from north to south. There's one culvert here that drains through here, a couple culverts in here that would drain, and this is fairly wet. So I think to filling land that's already been that's above the groundwater table already, bringing that land up is not going to displace the groundwater in a way that it's gonna flood out people's, it's gonna go into these culverts that is then gonna pass downstream. And I mean,
it already did though.
I-
And I guess my other question too, and I'm sorry for interrupting, but you keep referring to these other meetings. How come me as an abutting property owner was not aware of these other meetings? Because I would have loved to attend.
the planning board meeting that was on the February 13th, 2 weeks ago, was a legally noticed
So again,
meeting.
as I had stated too, when you mailed these letters, I did not pick up mine until February 18th when I got wind that I had something waiting. I did not get my notification, otherwise I would have been here on February 13th. And I also looked to read up the minutes and I did not see anything posted nor any video on it to try to get upbeat.
That's a great point. So our minutes are posted on our website 5 days after, 5 business days after a meeting. They're on the website now. All abutters were notified per RSA requirements, and I can get with you after, to go over that. So I'm happy to talk offline about. a lot of
Definitely, I mean,
but-
it's null and void at this point, but I'm just saying, like, that requirement obviously did not work. And I would have really, and I really would have liked it to be there.
The planning board did not close the public hearing.
Okay.
It's continued to, this coming, Thursday night.
Okay.
So,
I appreciate it.
same room.
Thank you.
Yep, I think it starts at 6,
Okay.
and I think we're first on the agenda.
Perfect.
Yes, sir.
Are you kind of done?
I am totally done.
She can add to what I,
Thank you.
I went through the files at the
Could you give
town,
your name to?
Bob Goodrich.
Okay, you have it right?
I'm on the Swanzey Conservation
Yep.
Committee. I went through the files for this lot and, because I've lived on Marcy Hill for years, I'm familiar with this piece of property. And the duties from Marlboro, purchased this with the intent of putting a gas station there. They were approved to put in 200 yards of fill. They ended up putting in 4,000 yards. And they were told by the Army Corps of Engineers to stop it and remove the fill, which never happened.
And I can vouch for, because I also played in those sand piles down at the bottom.
Yes, sir.
Happy to address that. Mr. Goodrich, if you dig further into that file and read all the documents, I believe it was in 1985, the Army Corps of Engineers, after the fact, approved the fill to be left in place. And in 1987, the Wetlands Board approved the fill to be left in place as is. And we were wondering, like, if it was illegally filled and, Army Corps is involved, state's involved, town is obviously all over it. It's a big deal. How could 40 years have gone by with nothing being done about it? And that we couldn't understand that. We were scratching our heads. And the reason we found out, looking at the town files, is that it was subsequently approved by Army Corps and the state. With some conditions, about stabilize the banks to 33-to-1 slopes and all this other stuff. So it was allowed to stay in place. So.
Okay. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Yes, now I'm looking here on the Conservation Commission, it said that granting a variance would not be in the spirit of the ordinance. They didn't want you in there,
Your name,
and you
sir?
were told, and that the property owner was told when they bought the property that there's other areas on that land to build, and this is not a spot to build on. They were told that. So why would you get a variance on something? So you're trying to skirt a variance, is what you're trying to do.
Skirt a variance. No, we're seeking a variance.
No, you're just trying to skirt around, build something that shouldn't be.
And so your name? Chuck Munson.
Chuck Munson.
Thank you.
And another thing too, now on this, checklist for special exception,
We're currently on the variance application.
on the variance application, okay.
So if we could limit all the questions just to this one
All right.
specific, there is a separate special exception that.
For exception and stuff, because when we get to that, there's a lot of problems with the exception on this. And stuff, due to the fact that somebody, whoever the idiot was that come up with this plan, and I'm gonna make it plain and
Sir,
simple.
if we could just limit this to the variance right now, if you could hold all comments on special
Well-
exceptions, if you get that.
I know you're looking at a variance, but the thing is, you're looking to do something to give a variance to something and push it through that shouldn't be going through at all. So whether it's, as far as now this 125 feet from the water, the way I gathered it from what I read today, when I looked in the regs, anything within The only time that something can be reduced to 75 feet is if it's existing failure. An existing failure then can be, once it's properly authorized, can be within the 75 foot. This isn't existing.
It's why,
This is new construction.
sir, just to clarify, this is why he's asking for a variance.
I realize that.
So you.
But what I'm saying is, the way I understand it, that isn't even an option.
It is an option. So if something's not permitted in the ordinance, you have to ask for a variance to gain relief from that. So because it's not permitted in our ordinance,
I must have misread it then, because it doesn't say anywhere there that there's an option for that. It's only, the only option it gave was in a repair.
Yeah, I understand the confusion. The only way to ask for relief is to obtain a variance, which is what we're doing here, so.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Board? Any questions on the? No?
What if any are options for either location of the leach field or the location of the septic system in general to avoid the 125 foot?
None.
As I mentioned, the building site is right here. And this is, all this land is within 125 feet of some wetland.
Okay.
So we would, the system would have to be put up in the backland up in here.
Okay.
So, but again, the wetland would have to be crossed to get to that septic site.
Okay.
And Joe, I think the rationale for, at least how I understood, was that disturbing.
Lesser of 2 inches.
Correct, there you go. Something.
In fairness, when we met with the Conservation Commission informally, and I think Mr. Goodrich might be able to attest to this too, is that we talked about things like that, and one of the I was making that argument, and I believe one or two of the commission members said they were kind of seeing my point, so. But anyway, that's not a public hearing, so.
Did the Conservation Commission weigh in on this application?
Yep, if you look in your packet on,
We can't access my, it isn't in there.
it is, yeah, it is on, let me help.
Sure, it was in the electronic copy that I came.
That was, those comments were issued before we met with them informally. So,
And they haven't issued anything since then?
correct.
It would be nice to get.
These are pretty thorough,
Yeah.
Really nice to get there.
This was a,
No, I'll get it from that.
Phase 3.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
About half of the commission's comments were related to the historic fill that occurred. So,
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened in your meeting. I'm just reading the only piece of information we sent. And seems like they've taken a position on at least 2 of the aspects. Granting the variance would not observe the spirit of the ordinance, I'll skip the rest of the reading. And granting the variance would not do substantial justice. So I don't know if their opinion has changed as a result of that meeting, but they have taken.
These comments were received after that.
Okay.
So just
before.
They're pretty similar to the planning board comments.
Keep in mind that we were originally scheduled to be meeting January.
Oh, you're right.
And these comments were received in January.
Yeah, our last meeting was canceled, so.
And then
Where the only place I'm going is, it would be very helpful to this board that we have the most up-to-date input from the conservation commission, given the impact of this area.
They did not update these comments. They had an opportunity to.
So this is sort of officially their comments?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Or officially their position?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, Ellen Driscoll. I just on this point, or a couple of points, that is the only public record that we have from the Conservation Committee. And I don't know what informal meetings, I don't know what the hell that means, like, you know, you meet in the hallway or something. I don't know what that means, how that has to do with a full meeting, a formal meeting. But if this is something that the town sets up to protect the wetlands, the 125 feet, I don't fully get the concept of ever granting a variance that is different from that. If that's, I mean, I'm assuming until possibly next year or something, we vote on that to change. If that's what the town, whoever came up with, that being the correct thing to protect our wetlands in this town, I don't even understand a variance being considered. I just don't get, it's like saying you have to stop at a red light, but then somebody else comes in and goes, no, can we just not have that happen there? You know, it's.
I understand your
Right?
position on that, but it's the whole point of the zoning board. Every ordinance, every applicant who comes in here, whether it's a wetland, a setback, what have you, is looking for relief from something that is black and white on a piece of paper. So from a property line, so
Right.
tall,
But,
you know,
but
so
isn't
wide.
that why we have the Conservation
Correct.
Committee though, to weigh in on
To
those
weigh in,
kinds of
and
issues?
that's what all the departments do and also
Right.
so forth to add their, you know, their opinion to what we're trying to look at as a board. But that is the point of a zoning board, is to give relief or to
Right.
search relief when it is deemed necessary or warranted in the spirit of the ordinance.
Okay.
That's
so
that's the point of why we're here.
My second question though, has to do with the planning board meeting that I came from last week. There was a point brought up that there's something on the ballot in March about crossing over wetlands in some way. I don't even know what the full scope of it is.
Mhm.
But the planning board at that point said, we can't really make a decision on this because this vote would affect it. You were quite surprised that that was even coming up on the ballot. So I don't know what the status is of that. I don't know if you can speak to that.
Either way, we're representative of what's today. That's what we're looking at. So
So
that's
you
how we
can
have
make,
to look at it.
you can make a rule today about this plan and a variance that may change as soon as March.
Possible, but.
And then what happens to that? If this plan, in other words,
We don't deal in ifs and thens, we have to deal with.
so
what's
he
in
would
front of us.
still, they would still have the variance to build even if it goes against what we all vote on in March?
No, not necessarily, but again,
Okay.
that's not what we're discussing right now. I'm happy to talk with you, if you come down to town hall tomorrow, we can discuss it.
You guys remember what I'm talking about?
Oh, and just a real quick clarification, all of our public meetings are posted on our website, everything is posted in full transparency on our website in 3 public places, both post offices and the board at town hall. So everything is open to the public and everything is posted in public places, so nothing is held secret.
Can I also add that the town meeting warrant on March 11th does not address, it's got nothing to do with the setback of septic systems off of wetlands. It's related to filling of wetlands and things like that. So we're talking kind of apples and oranges here.
Okay, any other further questions?
It would affect, however, it would affect if you went to Route 12, right? Because if I remember right, when I read that.
Yep.
Cause I happen to read what's coming up in March, and, the way I understand it, that stops any type of building over wetlands except for like walkways, you know, for that type of stuff, nature walkways and stuff. Other than that, you're not gonna be allowed to build over wetland at all. Which would kill your driveway to Route 12, why I'm saying, you know, right?
As presently configured, yes.
Right.
It does involve some wetland disturbance.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you.
Yes. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Chad Brandon, civil engineer with Fieldstone Land Consultants. I'm just want to speak, as the board knows, we represent a number of clients and landowners in, Swanzey and have over many years. And I do want to address just the regulations, and nothing project specific, but the regulations as it relates to the septic criteria. And I think what's really important, and it was touched on a little bit today, is that there is a distinct difference between what the state, requires as a 75-foot setback and what the town currently has of a 125-foot setback. And that discussion has been of great interest for a long time in this community. And the reality is there's no scientific basis for a 125-foot setback. If there was, the state would be enforcing that setback. What is of importance, and I'm not familiar with what, letters the Conservation Commission has submitted specifically for this application, but I think it's important to really highlight what the Conservation Commission agenda was relative to changing the wetlands ordinance, and their efforts, and in large part their efforts for a considerable amount of time over the last couple months. And their proposal, which they presented to the planning board and the select board, and ultimately was voted on before the planning board as it relates to what's going to go before the town at the March 11th, meeting under a warrant article, was to eliminate or reduce the 125-foot setback to 75 feet. Now, the planning board ultimately decided that what portions of the regulations are, that they would support to go forward. That particular provision did not go forward, but I think it's clear, and I'm stating this again, not necessarily to support, one project, but to support really, the landowners and people's rights in this community. And that is the technical reality here is there's no scientific basis for a 125-foot setback. That's why the commission was willing to entertain a reduction to the 75-foot that the state, and they clearly outlined their intention with the proposed, warrant articles and regulation changes that they really authored and rallied, as in the last couple months. I do have a copy of that with me today that I'd be happy to share with the board. And I'm sharing this, because, this is a topic of concern on, many properties in town for, a lot of developments, and it really needs to be considered from a unilateral standpoint and not just a, project by project basis. So I do think there's a clear direction that the commission has presented. I'm not interpreting their words are published, and I think have clearly been presented to a number of boards in this community over the last few months. And I just want to state that for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. But just to clarify, there is no pending warrant article that impacts this variance request.
Correct.
And even if there were, we can't assume it's gonna pass by the 10.
Correct.
We have to vote and discuss based on what it is right now, not what it's going.
To clarify, if there
And
was a.
I'm sorry that can't put this all off until this triggers off, but at this point in time, we can't really entertain anything that's gonna say, here's what's gonna happen. It's what we got in front of us.
And I think realistically, the planning board hearing is going to be continued this coming Thursday night because they wanted to see a traffic study, which we haven't even gotten a response from the traffic engineer yet, never mind do a study.
Well, that's for your site plan, which is independent of the issue on the table right now.
Right, but what I'm saying is, where I was going with this, sir, is that the the site plan review by the planning board will be after realistically town meeting. So we'll know what shook out of that warrant article.
But again, there's no warrant article pending that would affect this variance request.
But I'm just addressing in part Mr. Munson's comment.
But that's not the issue on the table right now.
Correct, totally correct. Yes, thank you.
Okay, any further questions? All right,
I do, and it's been asked and answered, but I apologize for asking again. The input we have from the Conservation Commission is the last official input from.
everything we have here is the most current.
Okay.
Can I speak to that? We had a meeting in February, the first Monday of February, and Stefan is the minute takers. Because we don't have an official one in the town of Swanzey yet, since Bev is retired, but he took the minutes for that meeting. I don't know if he has the.
Pretty sure it goes on with it. Yeah, I have comments for the planning board. I don't have any new comments for the zoning board. I talked to Sherry about it. It seems like.
You said zoning and conservation?
No, conservation commission gave me new comments for planning board, not zoning board.
Okay.
So
This is the latest and greatest from conservation.
Correct.
Okay.
But you said those were for January.
January 14th.
Yep.
Well, we did have a meeting in February.
I believe we were there.
Yes, we do. We don't have that.
Okay. Hearing no further questions. I'm going to close the public hearing side of this meeting and we will now go through the questions. Is there any discussion about what we're going to go for? Anyone have any thoughts? Okay. All right. You guys are with the rundown here.
If the board wants me to read a paragraph from the Conservation Commission's last meeting, actually, and I don't believe it relates to the 125-foot setback though, so. Material.
Okay, you want to add it? Please do.
So, this
Is this separate from what we have currently? Is what you're about to read separate from what we have? It's an additional comment, okay?
So Goodrich mentioned, Mr. Goodrich, he's in the room now, mentioned the filling upon the land, which the structure is proposed to be set back in the 1980s. Army Corps of Engineers had requested the site to be filled to be removed. Majority had been placed there illegally after a site plan for a convenience store. We already discussed the convenience store. Cited, so Sherry cited back in 1992, a letter from Concom to ZBA asked that the aforementioned fill be removed as part of mitigation for a wetland crossing. It was not removed. Sherry addressed the data showing test pits revealing the water table situated just 10 to 12 inches below the surface. Mr. Beaudry here explained that stormwater system would be approximately 18 to 21 inches in depth with a 2-foot invert. Sherry asked about a brook not appearing on the applicant's map and noted a hydrology study in the file indicating the direction of flow. But Mr. Beaudry addressed these comments. So I'm, again, reading into the record, but I don't think it makes a dent into what's being proposed.
Everyone understand?
Yeah, I'm showing that they had a meeting, they discussed it, and no new information, I think. Presented.
Is the public?
The public is closed, I'm sorry. Closed? Yep. So this is a meeting between us, a discussion between us as a board. Sorry. Okay. First question. Could the variance be granted without being contrary to the public interest? We like to start us off, Pete.
I don't think the variance can be granted. Based on what we have in front of us, I think 125-foot setback is pretty cast in stone. We've got letters from the Conservation Commission. We've got other supportive documentation. So I may have to say, I can't, that'd be a no for me.
No. All right, Lisa.
Also a note for me. I think with the information that we have and with our ordinance as it is, it would be contrary to the public, so, no.
Okay, yeah.
State has 75 feet and they meet that. So I would be a yes for question one.
Okay. And yes, and Joe.
I would say no, and I guess I'm a little disappointed. We keep on talking about what the state requirement is. That's great. Our requirement is 125 feet. So the state can do something, we can always do something more than the state requires. So I think that's the standard to go against, not what the state says.
So that's a no.
Looks no.
Well, I agree with the sentiment that the state and the town can have differing, and we can always go further. So, but again, it's the whole justification, in my opinion, to having a zoning board is to find relief for what's sitting, set in stone. Because there's certain circumstances that may arise where there is something that could rise above what the ordinance states, black and white. So I do agree with the sentiment. But in terms of this, I feel that the public interest could be met with this, so I'm gonna say yes. All right, would the spirit of the ordinance be observed, the variance be granted? We will start with Lisa.
I agree with the Conservation Commission. I don't think the spirit of the ordinance would be observed if it was granted.
Okay. And that's no.
There's a no.
And
I think the ordinance was constructed to provide perceived additional protections for the wetlands. However, I believe it would still be, the spirit would be observed if we granted it. So I'll be a yes.
okay. Joe.
I agree with Lisa's rationale. To me, the Conservation Commission has taken a pretty clear position. And so I would have to view this as no, and I've heard to say, one thing we haven't discussed, which I would have brought up in kind of in a more public way, we haven't talked about the current rain situation, things that we used to talk about as 100-year events, and now 10, 20-year events, which to me are only going to aggravate the situation. So I do not see, I vote no on this particular element.
Okay.
I think the spirit of the ordinance is to protect the wetlands. And
Okay. I actually agree with that sentiment on the spirit of the ordinance itself. However, contrary to public interest or not, is again proposed to protect the wetlands specifically. So from that perspective, I do agree. So I say no, it would not meet the spirit of the ordinance. All right, we're granting the variance to do substantial justice. We'll start with Ann.
Well, justice would be to whom, certainly for the applicant. It would provide them with relief. And it would be certainly exceed the state standards and a properly constructed system that could do that, so I'll be a yes.
Okay. Bill.
Again, taking both positions, granting the variance to me would not do justice to the town and the abutters. and not granting the variance, you can argue we would not do substantial, would not be unjust to the applicant because they bought the property knowing this. So on this element, I vote no.
Okay.
I'm gonna go the other way and say yes. Um, I just think that as presented, even though we encroach or we reduce the setback requirement on the ordinance itself, I think that located where it is, talking about this specific leach field, I think that I vote yes on it.
Okay. Lisa?
I'm gonna say no. I don't think it would do substantial justice. Certainly not to the wetlands and definitely not to the butter down here.
Mhm.
So, you know,
Again, not to flip flop on this, but the justice on the substantial justice, I mean, I'm listening, I've heard a lot of cases relating to wetlands over the years, and there seems to be a, dispute amongst what's the town is proposing and what the state has. So I think in this case, substantial justice would be done to the, a variance would actually provide substantial justice to what the town has kind of set forth as a code. So I would say yes. All right, could the variance be granted without diminishing property values or surrounding property values specifically? Yeah.
Will help me if I didn't hear any testimony about property values that I missed something.
I don't
believe there was mention of the effect on property values, so the installation of the leach field, I can't see where it would do any harm to the values. Having it as opposed to what would the other choice be, driving it away, as some businesses do, so I don't know. I would say, I would say yes, it could be granted without.
Okay. Joe?
Again, I agree that there has been no testimony to give us information one way or another. So relying on the adage of shit flowing downhill, I can see it. I can speculate it would affect property values, but it's pure speculation. So I abstain. I have no information.
Can I say that?
Public hearings closed. Yeah. I'm sorry, there was a question, the public hearing aspect is closed at this point.
No, it was just that the communal conversation, we did comment that stuff comes downhill, so, but it's close.
Okay. So Joe, you're abstaining from that vote?
Yeah, I have no information about one way or another.
All right, Pete?
Well, in my mind, if you can increase the property value, that's granted only because this would, I think, the whole presentation would increase property values rather than, so I see that.
And Lisa?
I agree, it would not diminish property value.
Okay. And for the same rationale you've all already stated, I would also agree that I don't see there being testimony that would see a diminish in the property value as a result of granting this variance. All right, do special conditions of the property exist to distinguish it from other properties in the area? Joe?
If you call the area, the properties along Route 12, no, it's the same as the rest of them.
Okay.
I give it joy. They're all the same through there. So there's nothing unique about this property.
Okay, so it's a no, and I'm assuming, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but Joe goes no.
Correct.
Lisa?
I agree, they're all very wet all through there, so no.
Okay. And?
I agree with Joe, Pete, and Lisa, and I asked the applicant, and they weren't able to define a substantial difference, so, you know.
No. Okay. All right, and I gotta be honest, I'm with you guys on that. I mean, looking at all the different properties throughout Route 12 this area, I haven't find distinguishing characteristic. They're wet. There's wetland here, there's wetland down the road, there's wetland above. The applicant actually attested to that. So from that perspective, I can't find something within what I have to find it as being distinguished as different. So I would agree with you. No. Owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish from other properties in the area, there's not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance and specific application of the provision to the property. Keith, please.
So read that to me again.
Owing to the special,
Way
this
too
is-
fast.
yeah, owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other property in the area, there is not a fair and substantial relationship between the general public purpose of the ordinance and the specific application of the provision to the property.
Yeah, I mean, what are the special conditions of this property? The fact that the only spot they propose to do this project is in this corner. It might be able to go somewhere else with more thought and get away from the wetlands.
So now. Okay. Lisa?
I agree with you, also no.
No? Ann?
No, because 5 is no.
Same rationale.
Mhm.
Okay. Joe?
Yeah, I'm confused because in the first part of 5, the sort of sentiment was there aren't any special conditions.
There are.
So why are we answering the question that says owing to these special conditions, which don't exist? So to me, it's a meaningless question. So if I have to vote, I vote no, but to me, it's meaningless.
Well, be based on your own
No,
observation.
but, no, based on the way this group, the consensus of this group on the first part, we concluded by consensus that there weren't any special conditions. So this one starts owing to the special conditions, but there aren't.
Yeah, I know you guys are in the middle of voting, I'm so sorry. Just, if I want to formally recognize that the applicant has listed special conditions on their application. And so if you're listening to this, wondering why that's not being brought up, I just want to recognize that you do have them listed on the application. So just want to point that out.
Okay. You want to address that, or if you all read through the questions and feel confident that the applicants at least addressed that from their own words?
I'm certainly confident with the consensus of this group on the first part of it. And again, having answered that the way we did, I'm not sure we're even asking the second.
Okay.
That's my own.
Just want to ask.
Yep.
Um,
Okay, and for myself, again, I would say no, and I say it for the same reasons for, I did it for 5. Is the proposed,
That 0 to 5? 0, yes, me, 5, no?
at this right here on AI, there are 5 no's.
Yeah, thank you.
That's correct. So A2, is the proposed use a reasonable one? Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, I think that would be a great place to have a restaurant or drive-through, but I just, the property is not. I don't feel that it's suitable because of the wet. I'd love to see a little diner or restaurant or something there, but. Not on that, not on the wetlands.
Are you answering the affirmative or the negative?
Um. Is the proposed use, yes.
Yes, okay. Just want to clarify.
Sorry.
And
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
Okay. Pete?
yes.
I would also agree, yes. It is a reasonable use. As proposed, yes. Okay, because the two criteria of A and AI and A2 were not met, an unnecessary hardship will be deemed to exist if and only if, owing to the special conditions of the property that distinguish it from other properties in the area, the property cannot be reasonably used in strict conformance with the ordinance, and a variance is necessary to enable a reasonable use of the property. Yeah, yes or no?
So I did read the special conditions that the applicant put forth, but I didn't see that they were any different than the other properties that are in that area. So I'm a no.
No. Joe?
Again, I vote no, it goes back to, this is the same as other properties in the area.
Okay. Pete?
I say no also. And my rationale is a little different. I think that the property could be developed at some other spot. This is showing.
Okay. And Lisa?
I was thinking the same as Pete. The property in a different spot can be used. But not this spot,
Okay,
so no.
so no. And again, this question's pretty clear, and starting with, if you found special conditions of the property.
So we need a majority vote of the board to hear another application. Per our rules of procedure.
Yes, sir.
Just recap what just happened. The camera died. And I've got to plug in the power, so people on Zoom didn't.
Okay.
Just want to like recap how the vote went.
So the vote was made, based upon the answering the questions in the negative from the majority of the board members. A motion was made to deny the application. It was seconded and then voted upon in the affirmative. It was a 5-0 vote. Good, thank you. So now the next question is, do we hear another variance? It's right now 9:15. Where the next variance, I'm sorry, the next agenda item on our docket is identical, well, not identical, sorry. It's both with Belt LLC. It's a special exception for a drive-through. Do we persevere through?
I'm a no. I'm out.
Okay, and is out.
Can't do it. I get up at 3 every day, so. Not
I
having
would
it.
vote too.
I can still.
I can stay as well.
I can say I prefer not, but I can't.
You guys can be stronger than me, but I gotta call Pakistan.
Okay, so it's 3-2. If three, are you voting in the affirmative?
Again, my preference is to not, but if,
I need a yes or no.
yes.
Yes. Okay, so it's 3-2. We'll continue the next variance. Or the next,
I mean,
sorry.
we need a unanimous vote of the 3 people that are gonna be hearing.
So Mr. Bowler, you're within your right to ask for a continuance at the next meeting.
We would like to continue this development we said to the next meeting.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for everyone's,
Hold on.
wait a second.
Yeah, 2 more agenda items. Mr. Chad.
You're not going to for the, oh, right, so I get the 3 people who are
We
willing.
still have to continue.
Okay.
There's another aspect here.
Yep.
Mr. Brandon, what's your preference, sir?
What do we have for a board? I'm sorry.
We have a 3-person board that has voted to stay. 2 who are willing to stay.
We're here both representing an owner as well as the town. So it's crapshoot. So if we get denied and it fails on March 11th, we're good anyway.
Correct. But if we get denied and it passes. Not good.
We're not good.
So when's the next meeting?
March 17th.
After the vote. Right?
It is after the vote.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like
You
earlier.
understand, did Adam explain to you what the conundrum is?
No, go ahead. So we need, oh, sorry, so this is for Mr. Brandon's items, the two variances. There is an RSA that states that a building permit cannot be issued 120 days prior to town meeting. Because of that RSA, they are asking for relief for a potential amendment that's going to get voted on at town meeting. That RSA essentially puts them between a rock and a hard place. They could build their wetland crossing today, but no permit can be issued for that crossing. To gain relief from that statute, they are seeking a variance. We've had two lawyers confirm that this is their only path to relief. So I'm tired, so I hope that explained it well, but.
Yeah, basically, when regulations, proposed changes in regulations are posted, you have to design to them. If you have to design to them, there also has to be a path forward where you can request relief from them. And so because they're posted, we have to design to them. We have two projects that are actively going on. One of them has an approval and gentleman wants to, extend. And then the other one's a 2-lot subdivision, and both of these are in the the tax incentive district, and along Safford Drive, it's there's some conflicting timeframe issues relative to these two applications. So our goal was to go forward this evening to try to keep the project moving forward and to keep the prospective buyers engaged, but it's very risky with a 3-person board. Clearly.
Maybe you can make a phone call.
I prefer to, I mean, it's not getting earlier.
No, I understand, but I mean, it's fairly important. I mean, I'm just suggesting maybe we just adjourn for a few minutes if you need to make some calls.
Yeah, I can make a phone call.
There's another option to have a meeting before town meeting. Now, right now it's scheduled after town meeting. Can we reschedule the March meeting?
Well, we can do a special zoning board meeting, that needs to be renoticed, and.
Do we have enough time to
Or the
notice
date.
it, et cetera?
Yeah, we need 5 days.
It wouldn't have to be renoticed if we continue it tonight because it's a notice meeting.
Yeah.
That will impact us too. We could continue to be for the.
Yeah, we could continue it to next Monday. 3rd.
Yeah, still too.
Yeah,
Yeah, that
the
makes
3rd.
sense.
Continue it to the 3rd, have a special zoning board meeting.
Yeah.
Just spitballing here.
I'm okay with that. That keeps people with a fresher head. And we go forward.
I don't think continue is the correct term, just on everybody else.
What's that?
Continue is technically not the right term, because the public hearing was open, so. Just want to clarify.
So
It's creating
it has to have a special board meeting, no continuing.
So give us the correct verbiage.
If we can open the public hearing,
don't remember.
we can open the public
Well,
hearing.
we would request continuances if so the public hearing would open, we'd request
Yeah,
continuances,
exactly.
and then it would go, I mean, otherwise.
I could do Monday, but I can't tonight, so.
Okay.
Is Monday acceptable?
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait for
Monday
you
the
to
third.
adjourn. Just heading up, I've been sitting for 3 hours.
A 5-person board.
5-person board.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
I'll
understandable.
be crippled.
I'm good with Monday, as long as we go before that.
What's the worst for you?
It's all wetland, it's all gonna be, all right, I'll check out.
Are we not adjourning? Are we not adjourning
Well-
tonight?
Well, we're gonna adjourn at some point here. We're just, we're gonna have a meeting on Monday or not. I'm okay with having a Monday.
Monday.
Okay, you too.
Okay, I'll get a notice tomorrow.
Monday's good. We have 3.
I'm good about
4, we got 4 people, and we have at least 1,000 other, alternatives as well, right?
Okay, next Monday, 7 PM.
This one starts.
Good bid.
You want to do it Wednesday?
Monday's a good day for me.
Is that,
I appreciate it.
who made the motion, who seconded?
Motion's being made by myself. I'll make a motion to move to Monday. I don't know, move is the right word, but use the right verbiage, Monday at 7 o'clock, special meeting, 7 o'clock. Can't wait.
Second.
Second.
Okay.
All right, it's been motioned, it's been seconded.
I think I technically have to request a continuance for both applications in order to not have to renotice. So if you don't mind, Mr. Chairman, I would, as Chad Brandon with Fieldstone Land Consultants, representing both the applications, the last two applications on the agenda, we'd like to respectfully request a continuance to Monday's meeting that you so kindly have decided.
Okay.
I think you need to open the hearing up to do that.
The hearing is open.
We can.
So, all right, the hearing is open right now. Okay, it's a public, so the public hearing is opened.
For those two last items.
For those two last items, they've been submitted. Is there any questions or concerns the audience has? Or any other board members have any thoughts or concerns? No? Hearing none.
I have you on the agenda for next Monday. It will be noticed tomorrow. Everyone will get an email.
Okay.
And it will be on.
Yeah, I'm going to close the public section of the hearing. We had a vote. It was a motion.
There was a motion.
All right.
Motion for a second.
I made a motion.
I'm sorry, I hate to do this, but if I'm requesting a continuance, there technically has to be a vote.
Exactly.
On both applications.
Yeah, we're gonna vote for both of them. So I made a motion myself to move this to to next Monday. You seconded
I
me?
did, yeah.
No,
So that's for the first application.
For ZBA 25-003.
let's amend it to include both applications.
So 25-003 and 25-004.
I'm amending it for both of the
Those two.
of the applications. Is it still seconded, Lisa?
It is.
Okay, beautiful.
Is that what it is?
Please, everyone in the firm, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, 5-0. We're going to do that. We made it. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes. Is there any other business? I will love to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Oh, wait a minute.
Motions to adjourn.
I have
All those
some
in
other
favor?
business.
Aye.
What are we doing? No, I'm just kidding.
Watch, someone's got a second. Let's make this official. Second, okay. And second, it's moved and seconded. All those in favor of the motion of adjourning, say aye. Aye.
Your question
Nays?
is tabled.
Had to
No nays.
That is behind you. What's your question? I'm gonna have a question.
Thank you.